All right, everyone. Who out there wants to see different teams in the college football playoff? Clemson fans not responding. Georgia fans not responding. Ohio State fans, Alabama fans, of course, not responding. Everybody else probably, yeah, different teams in the college football playoff. We did see two new teams, not necessarily unexpected teams, but two new teams in the playoff, of course, in 2021. Saturday night here at the Voice of College Football. What could be better? Saturday night at the Voice of College Football, just 3 Saturdays to go. 3 Saturdays from right now, we will be talking about real football. If you consider Hawaii and Vanderbilt football real football, Nebraska, Northwestern, Wyoming, Illinois, Hawaii and Vanderbilt and others, Florida State playing week 0 as well against the Dukes of Duquesne. We will talk it all up, of course, 3 weeks from tonight. I can't wait for football to talk about football, not what happened last year and what could happen this year. We will have it unveil right in front of us to evaluate and discuss. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Saturday night. And our topic for tonight, dark horses. Not the most unique, not the most creative, not the most revolutionary topic for a college football playoff discussion would be dark horses, because we're always looking for dark horses. But I am going to serve up for you 4 dark horses this season that I just about guarantee nobody else will be serving up as dark horses. I'm not talking about just teams like Oregon that have not made it to the playoff since the first year of the playoff in 2014, or teams like Penn State that have flirted with the playoff and contended for the Big Ten championship and won it last in 2016 and went to the Rose Bowl, teams that win 10 and 11 games each year. Not talking about dark horses that are just outside of that. Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, 5 that we consider kind of dark horses. I'm not even going to the level of what we've seen talked about throughout the offseason by myself and all of you and many others. NC State, Miami, out of the ACC. Baylor, Oklahoma State, of course, played down to the wire, down to the final inch of the field for the Big 12 championship. And had Oklahoma State won that game in the Big 12 championship game, they most likely, instead of Cincinnati, would have made the playoff last year. No, I am talking about dark horses. Dark horses. Okay, before we get to the college football talk and I unveil my 4 dark horses, and I mean dark horses. I mean it. Look out. I'm going to get a lot of criticism for this. People are going to be, are you crazy? Yeah, I'm crazy. But we're looking for dark horses. Let's shake it up. Let's look for some teams that could possibly, based on a lot of different factors, could make a surprising run. And we'll probably need some help. Maybe a 2-loss team makes the playoffs this year. Maybe. Before we get to that, a few reminders here at the Voice of College Football. The Amazon link, please. When you shop at Amazon, the joint's worth $1.6 trillion. $1.6 trillion. Amazon's worth $1.6 trillion. So anything you purchase from Amazon goes to Amazon. Of course, that's the way it should be. However, they have these little affiliate programs where they give me a link. And I encourage you to shop on Amazon, which I actually am not. Shop wherever you want. But I know that many of you do shop on Amazon. Half the country every month shops on Amazon. 338 million people in America, and half of them, 119, no, do the math, Mark, 169 million people every month in the United States shop on Amazon. So when you do, please use the link in the description section of the videos. Also, we've got quite the Discord. If you don't know what that is, it's a big live chat. It's like what we're doing right now. And all your comments and questions that go in the live chat and your conversation with fellow college football fans, we do that constantly in Discord. So go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, and sign up for Discord, as many of you have over the past few weeks. So we appreciate that. Many of you have signed up for Discord over the past few weeks. And again, it's simple. I hope it is. I haven't done it myself because I don't have to do it. So you can give me feedback if it could be made simpler in any such way. Go to patreon.com, search Mark Rogers TV, sign up there. I get you the link as soon as I see a notification in my email that John Doe is signed up for Discord/Patreon. I get you the link. I got a fancy little letter and a little plaque, a little virtual plaque I send you to say, hey, John, welcome. It's great to have you. And you can talk college football over there anytime. You don't need to wait for a live stream. Anytime you want to talk college football, we will talk college football. And it continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And you can also take part in watch parties during the season, after show parties there as well. And then in addition to that, that doesn't even count your Patreon benefits, which of course are my predictions, my weekly predictions. You're going to get my season predictions right here on YouTube. My weekly predictions and the predictions from guys like Steve Days and Tony Gerdeman and the Wholesome One and Corey Brada. About 12 to 15 different media members provide theirs as well. And you can follow along and root for your favorite media person, or you could root for me, because I can say this for a few more weeks. I was the prediction champion last year, both against the spread and straight up. And you get exclusive live streams there per request. And not just exclusive live streams like somebody requested about a month ago, a Michigan State schedule preview, and I delivered right there on Patreon. All right. You want some dark horses? Here come some dark horses. We go out to the Great Northwest. And I told you, not Oregon. Do I expect Oregon to make the college football playoff? No. They're going to be 0-1 after 1 week, and probably not the prettiest of victories or losses if you're into pretty losses, quality losses. I am. Hey, if they stay within a field goal or one score of Georgia, Oregon, I'm going to almost count that as a win. That's more impressive than just about any win in the country anyone's going to have when you really think about it. However, Oregon, not the dark horse here. It's their Civil War rivalry, their rival in Oregon State. Oregon State, our college football playoff dark horse, our first one that we serve up for you. Oregon State, coached by one of the underrated coaches in college football, Jonathan Smith. They have a quarterback battle going on right now in August camp between Chance Nolan and former Nebraska transfer Tristan Gebbia. Now, it should be Chance Nolan. He's one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in the country, at least on the dual threat side, on the running side, one of the better quarterbacks in the nation from that standpoint. Chance Nolan threw 19 touchdowns and 10 picks last year, of course, led Oregon State to its first bowl game since 2013. Deshaun Fenwick, the South Carolina transfer, ran for almost 500 yards, caught 23 passes. They've got a hotshot freshman running back who impressed in the spring, and Damian Martinez. 3 of their top 4 pass catchers are back there at Oregon State. I know they lost 7 games in the Pac-12, and that's like losing 9 games anywhere else. But who's calling me? So. Hopefully that will stop soon. Issues with Oregon State. Their pass defense last year was awful, but they've got defense coordinator Trent Bray, who's taking over that position And they're hopeful that with a top-rated pass rush, they were 122nd in pass defense efficiency last year. But yeah, a multiple defense. Omar Spates, 89 tackles, one of their top defensive guys. Oregon State, yes, Oregon State. I'm serving up as a college football playoff. Dark, dark, dark. I can't say dark enough times, so just underline it 50 times in your mind. Dark horse. I know that there are going to be people that are going to respond to this video. Hopefully nobody live, because you're listening to me actually state it live, that are going to be responding like I predicted these teams to go to the playoff. I'm not predicting them to go to the playoff. I am saying that there are certain factors in play that could lead, as we stretch the possibilities out as much as you could possibly imagine, to a college football playoff possibility. Let's take a look at the Oregon State schedule, because it does not start out too cushy for the Beavers here. It's a pretty difficult schedule. So this is what you're looking at here out of Oregon State's schedule. It's tough out of the gate. Now, not tough if you're necessarily somebody like Georgia, but Oregon State's not Georgia. Oregon State, they might be 0-2 out of the gate. They could be a good football team and be 0-2. But they've got Boise State at home in Corvallis, one of the more difficult places to play on the West Coast. And then they go to Fresno State, who loses their head coach, Kalen DeBoer. Jeff Tedford taking over at Fresno State. So I would expect maybe the Bulldogs to take a slight step back this season. And then the Pac-12 portion of the schedule starts in difficult fashion. USC at Utah. My goodness, if Oregon State can start the season 4-1. 4-1. Pick your loss. It doesn't matter, because if they're going to make a college football playoff appearance, of course, they can only lose one game. That's all there is to it. So start 4-1, because that's the schedule. That is the difficulty of the schedule. If they can't beat the rest of those teams, then they're obviously not worth talking about anyway. But Boise State at Fresno State, that's a difficult non-conference slate out of the gate. But Oregon State is the first team I serve up there for college football. Dark, dark, dark. Underline it 1,000 times. Dark horse status. Okay, next up. K-State. Can you imagine Adrian Martinez playing in the college football playoff? Can you imagine Nebraska fans watching Adrian Martinez play in the college football playoff? One of the all-time greats in Nebraska history. I'm not talking about realistically or reasonably, but statistically, he is one of the leading passers and rushers in the history of the program, touchdown scorers. But and not the turnover machine that everyone accuses him of being. You know what happens with narratives in sports and otherwise? They get thrown out of proportion. Adrian Martinez turned the ball over at the wrong times. He didn't turn it over that much. His interception rate is not that high. Turned it over at the wrong times. But you know what? Maybe he wasn't the problem. Or maybe he wasn't much of the problem. Now he goes to Kansas State. He goes to a functional, not a dysfunctional, he goes to a functional football program. And yes, Nebraska fans, I'm going to call your football program dysfunctional until it proves to be functional. You don't start the season with a special teams gaffe that loses a game and finish the season with a special teams gaffe that loses your last game of the season, and do that about 4 or 5 times in between, and not have a special teams coordinator. Why Nebraska did not have a special teams coordinator is beyond belief. Anyway, back to Kansas State, 8-5 last year, finished off a Texas Bowl victory against LSU. Adrian Martinez at quarterback, yes. But Deuce Vaughn, one of the best backs in the nation. Get familiar with Deuce Vaughn. Have you watched Deuce Vaughn play? Almost 1,900 yards from scrimmage last year and 22 touchdowns. He is a joy to watch. They've got a new offensive coordinator in Colin Klein. Now, there you talk about arguably one of the greatest players in the history of the school. Colin Klein almost won a Heisman as Bill Snyder's quarterback back in the 2000s. There, of course, at K-State. And guess what? This is going to be interesting to watch. They're going to run a lot of up-tempo. That's what they're telling us. That Colin Klein says, we're going up-tempo. At K-State, that's like saying you're going to do that at Wisconsin. Going to run some up-tempo, throw it around a little bit. Get creative. Their front seven on defense is arguably the best in the Big 12. Felix Enudike Uzoma had 11 sacks last season. Daniel Green, 89 tackles. And Eli Hodgins. Both of those players, Green and Hodgins, decided to return to college football. They could have made some money at the NFL level. The secondary is the sore spot. 98th last season in explosive pass rate. 98th. But on the running side, again, 20th in rush success rate. The special teams are remarkable at Kansas State. They typically are, but we're doing our homework, not just talking about historically. Right now, special teams for Kansas State. They've got 4 touchdowns on the roster in kick returns. Look out for Kansas State here. And let's check out the Kansas State schedule as well. Curious to see that. If this thing will cooperate. I put these out there without looking at schedules. I shouldn't have done that because the schedule is going to have a lot to do with it. But, when I have a staff, I will get those minor details taken care of. But as it stands right now, we've got Kansas State starts out with South Dakota State. Typically, Kansas State doesn't play anyone out of conference. They're one of those teams that doesn't play. And I should probably ride them more for that than I do because I get on teams like Baylor and NC State for dodging teams and not playing anybody out of conference. NC State's notorious for playing nobody. Baylor, notorious for playing nobody. Kansas State pretty much doesn't. They've played Mississippi State home and home here recently. They played Auburn home and home like 6 or 8 years ago, but typically nobody. This year, Missouri. Okay, that's a nice little cross-sectional game between the SEC and the Big 12 right there. 2 former rivals in the Big 12 there, Missouri. Week 2, that's at home. If they can't beat Missouri, they're not contending for a college football playoff. So the 3 non-conference games, they should be 3-0, Kansas State, when they go to Norman to take on Oklahoma. And we know what kind of thorn in the side K-State has been for Oklahoma. And then the rest of the Big 12 schedule, not necessarily daunting. The Big 12 is good in that it's deep. The Big 12 is deep, but it's not elite. Nobody's elite in the Big 12. At Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Iowa State's going to be down this year. They've got an off week before their stretch run against TCU on the road. TCU's rebuilding under Sonny Dykes. Oklahoma State, of course, is going to be an extremely difficult game. So that 3-game stretch right there, that's a rough 3-game stretch. Stretch it to 4 games with West Virginia on the road. But Oklahoma State, Texas, and Baylor, back to back to back. Again, you've got to go through unscathed, or lose 1 game, of course, is typically good enough for a Power 5 team, probably not named Oregon State, to make the college football playoff. So there it is for Kansas State. I like the Wildcats. Or at least I like the formula of a possible, and I'm talking about like a 1 in 100,000 shot. I'll call it less than 1 in a million. 1 in 100,000 shot for K-State to make a run at the college football playoff. Hey, if Baylor can do it. Next up, the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. So here's the formula for the Gophers. Quarterback Tanner Morgan, in amongst the two great quarterbacks of 2019 were, of course, Joe Burrow, 60 touchdowns, 6 picks. Tua Tagovailoa, who threw, his ratio was ridiculous too. It was 60-6 for Burrow. It was like 48-4, whatever it was for Tua. And then Tanner Morgan had the third best TD to pick rate in the nation at 30-7. Minnesota last year, though, without Kirk Ciarrocca, who left for Penn State, threw the ball less than any team in college football, in major college football, FBS football, that was not a service academy. Minnesota only threw the ball 257 times in 13 games. That's less than 20 times per game. Did not trust Tanner Morgan, even though they lost Mo Ibrahim, one of the best backs in college football, in week 1. Maybe they would have beaten Ohio State, possibly, because he was tearing them up, 160 yards in the third quarter. They lost 4 running backs. They were down to their 5th string running back and still winning ball games to go 9-4 in the second best conference in America. They beat Wisconsin to close out the season. They had a 1-score game against Iowa. They had the 2 curious head-scratcher losses to Bowling Green and Illinois, and that's because they couldn't throw the ball. So if this team finds the passing offense or anything close, anything that resembles the passing offense that they had 2 years ago, look out. Chris Aubin-Bell needs to get more involved and be more involved and brought into the offense after he caught 36 passes, 6 touchdowns. So Ciarrocca comes back from Penn State as the OC, where they had the big 2019 11-2 top 10 finish. They had one of the best defenses in the nation last year, top 10 in points against and total defense. And they had 7 starters back. They have 7 starters coming back from a defense that was top 10 in the nation. Although they lose a lot up front, I'm concerned about the offensive line losses, although they bring back who might be the best center in the Big Ten, John Michael Schmitz. So we deliver for you one dark horse out of the Big Ten, and that would be Minnesota. Let's check out their schedule for 2022. They never play a tough non-conference schedule. Minnesota, they don't play anyone either. Again, we'll put Baylor out there, NC State. How about Iowa? Doesn't play anyone. Minnesota doesn't play anyone. And there you have it. New Mexico State, Western Illinois, Colorado. And they've got Colorado at home. They beat the Buffs last year 30-0. In Big Ten play, especially if you're in the West, really if you're in either division, it matters a lot who you play in the other division. Who does Minnesota play? No Ohio State on the schedule. No Michigan on the schedule. There's a Penn State game. So they do have a pretty rough non-division with at Michigan State, at Penn State. And then the other game is against Rutgers. They've got most of the difficult games spaced out, although they do have a Michigan State Purdue back-to-back there. They've got Penn State there, as you see. But most of that is spaced out in regards to the difficult games. So Minnesota, we serve them up as a dark horse for the college football playoff. And lastly, give me one more here. Let's go to the group of 5. Who do you think it's going to be? Air Force. Hazik Daniels is a 3-year starter. He's the only player in the nation who has a school record both for throwing the longest touchdown pass and running for the longest touchdown run, 94 and 92 yards. Hazik Daniels had a banner day in the bowl game against Louisville. Air Force, as you will know, don't throw the ball more than like 4 or 5 times a game. 9 for 10 for 252 and 2 scores in the first half against Louisville. Bowl game MVP. Fullback Brad Roberts, 1,352 yards. Air Force is loaded with experience coming back. And if you can ever trust that a particular team is going to be disciplined, is going to be poised, it's going to be tough, going to be scrappy, and it's not going to be fazed by the situation, who's it going to be? It's going to be a military academy team. They have a lot more important things to deal with than playing these silly football games on Saturday. They deal with a lot of real life things, like life and death kind of situations that they not necessarily deal with at this point in their careers, but they are preparing for those situations. Therefore, going out to play a silly football game on Saturday, that's easy. So Air Force, 10-3 last year, beat Louisville again in the, whatever they called it, First Responder Bowl, I think it was. So we serve up Air Force. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. There you go. 4 dark horse college football playoff contenders. They're not contenders. They're dark horses. And they'll probably all lose like 7 or 8 games. All right. We will get into the comment section, but of course, I will not go in reverse and grab any of these unless we've got a super chat, which we do from Jared the Actor. I'm sometimes an actor up here myself, Jared. Bucky or Hawkeyes will win the West. I'll throw $300 on your channel if that doesn't happen. Corey rules, by the way. Yes, I'm sure Corey would appreciate your support there. I didn't know if that was Corey rules or Corey rules. Didn't know if Corey had set up his own rules or something like the Jordan rules. Bucky or the Hawkeyes will win the West. So everybody remember this. If we get a Purdue winner, Nebraska, Minnesota going to the college football playoff, and we do not have a winner in the West from Wisconsin or Iowa, we get a $300 payout from Jared the Actor. Do we have any other super chats I need to catch up with? I do not believe. Certainly let me know if I'm missing any, because by the time I got into the chat here, we're talking about over 500 comments. Good Lord. Jared the Actor, again, thank you so much for that super chat contribution. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone, over the first couple minutes of this live stream. I barely could spit out any words. Jerry the Actor. Hey, Mark. Getting pumped up for the season. Excited to watch your coverage. I am, too. I'm excited to see it myself. I'm pumped up as well. Also, want to, before we get to any calls, and I guess I do have to throw the link out there. Before we get to any calls, I want to let everyone know that last season we delivered post-game for a ton of our team channels. We would love to have post-game for every team channel. And until they perfect the cloning process, I can't pull it off. People comment to me every week, and I appreciate the comment, but comment to me during the season, hey, Mark, are you going to do the Penn State postgame? Or why don't you do the Ohio State postgame this? Well, I'm here doing the national postgame show. So I can't do the individual postgame shows for the team channels. So we are looking for postgame hosts. Last year, we delivered to you postgame every week for Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Nebraska, Penn State, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and I believe that's it. This year, we would like to get post-game covered for all of our team channels. So I've sent out some notices both here and on Twitter if you are interested. So basically, here are the criteria. There's 3 criteria. Okay, 4 criteria. Number 1, you got to know football. You got to know your team. Of course, if you're going to be the post-game host for the Auburn post-game, I don't expect you to know about Boise State. So know your team and reasonably know the opponent. So know the personnel. Don't be like a particular writer that I reached out to this week, and I would never state the person's name, of course. We run a class operation here at the Voice of College Football. But I was looking for a contributor for this particular team and reached out to this particular site. And the individual must have asked me 4 times what I was going to ask him. If you're a beat writer for a team, you should just be able to show up. And I don't mind asking, okay, what is the framework of the conversation? Recruiting, position battles. Absolutely. Most don't ask that, but sometimes somebody wants a bit of a framework. Like I was asked to be on the radio, and I don't even know where this was. It was our buddy Carter from the LSU channel, from his LSU channel, Power Hour. But he was hosting a radio show this week and asked me to go on at like 9:30 in the morning. So I set the alarm for 9:20 and I jumped on the radio with Carter. Now, hey, the Voice of College Football showing up. I'm not going to ask, oh, what are you going to ask me? No, I just show up. He can ask me anything. He could ask me about Boise State's quarterback situation. He could ask me anything under the sun. I should be prepared for it. I should be ready. So if you cover one team, you should know that team. You shouldn't be asking me, what are you going to ask me? So I tolerated that until I was told in this DM exchange, well, I don't really know the personnel that in depth. I just have surface knowledge. I'm thinking, you write articles covering that particular team, and you're telling me that you have surface knowledge? You don't have in-depth personnel knowledge of their roster, their team? I have more than that. I can talk to myself. Okay. So, criteria number 1 for a post-game host, you got to know your team. You cannot be talking to people in the chat that know more than you. We don't want that. So, know your team. Number 2, you got to be able to talk. You've got to be able to talk at least as well as I do, because that's not a high standard. So talk at least as well as I do and communicate. Number 3 would be reliable. That means show up. And that does mean things don't happen, things in your life, family plans. You can miss a week or 2 or 3 or whatever. But we need to know as soon as possible so we can fill your spot. So be reliable, show up, be a professional. And then number 4, don't say anything stupid on here. So as you guys know, this isn't the same operation or content creation that other people provide. We keep it clean here. That doesn't mean you can never cuss. You can cuss, but I don't want any expletives streaming for minutes on end. That's it. So if you filled those requirements, then hit me up if you're interested in hosting post-game here at the Voice of College Football, because we either need hosts for certain channels for certain teams, or we want to supplement our current coverage because people take time off. Plus, in terms of our Oklahoma channel in particular, we've got Jason Ray, does an outstanding job, but Jason doesn't want to sit there and talk for 2 hours. He would like some conversation with somebody. We want different perspectives, different We want different perspectives unless I'm sitting here. Then we only have one perspective. No. So I am leaving the link here in the chat. There it is. But Jared the actor, thank you so much for getting us started here. Thank you. You at this point, Jared, are sponsoring the show. You are responsible for sponsoring the show. All right. Amazon link in the description section. Please use it when you shop Amazon. Discord/Patreon. It's one big bundle of fun. Sign up on Patreon, MarkRogersTV. We need post-game hosts. Hit me up, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right. Before I get to Will, I will let you know also that I believe I've decided that this is going to be Power 5 Conference Week. So starting on Sunday night, I'm going to be highlighting and breaking down a different conference every night, all week. Power 5 Conference Week this week on the Voice of College Football. And I am going to be delivering Week 1 previews. Georgia, Oregon, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Florida, Utah, all the big games. I will be delivering Week 1 previews very soon. All right. Will is on the line.
What's going on, Mark?
How are you, man?
Another day, another Notre Dame commit. I'm loving life. We got Dylan Edwards out of Kansas.
Dylan Edwards out of Kansas. Did they play high school football in Kansas?
Yeah, in Derby.
Okay.
So we flipped him from Kansas State, so it was exciting.
Let's honor the Irish here. Get rid of this ugly silver helmet, whoever that is. And there you go.
So just for fun, I did my own dark horses, as you did. And we both had Oregon State and Minnesota. And I also added North Carolina, Arkansas, and Houston. I also think that I also think that they can possibly go on a run. UNC, I'm optimistic on because they don't have to play Clemson, and if NC State beats Clemson, like I think there's like a 20% chance that happens. Then UNC plays NC State at the end of the year, and I think they can do the double on them like Utah did. So I feel like if UNC takes care, well, they do have to play Notre Dame. I think they'll probably most likely be their one loss. I think that's the best case scenario for UNC. I think they can go 12-1 and make the playoff.
I actually had 4 or 5 other teams. I was going to keep that list going, and some of the teams that you just mentioned were other teams that I was going to get to, like North Carolina. Yes.
Yeah.
And Houston.
Mm-hmm. I mean, West Virginia, I kind of got sucked in by the West Virginia guy talking up their team.
Yeah, don't do that.
A little bit.
Joey mad tonight. Joe, I'm every time I have a derogatory comment to make about the Mountaineers, I wonder where Joey is because he just doesn't like that. But we love Joey. And I just say that because we love Joey. But you stating that reminds me of last season. Because we have our Nebraska show and I get pumped the Nebraska up my, as you well know. And I was working through my predictions and I had Nebraska at 4-8. And then, they went 3-9. I had them at 4-8. And and then we did a show, like this was like a Tuesday night. I had my predictions done. Then we did a Tuesday night Nebraska show. Then I released my predictions like the next day and I changed them like 6-6. And I had to take two wins off somebody else in the Big Ten, 2 other teams. And then I'm kicking myself because I'm like, Mark, you knew better. You were right there, 4-8. And I let them sway me.
Yeah, I mean, the mediocre 12 is probably the conference I know least about. So I that's probably part of it.
The what?
The mediocre 12. Because they don't have any elite teams. Although I think Baylor, if Dave Aranda...
12. I'm going to be kinder. The decent 12.
Yeah.
But the mediocre 12. Yeah. They are. The no elite teams. Joey hates to hear that. No elite teams in the Big 12.
I think that if Dave Aranda stays at Baylor, I think he maybe can turn them into a playoff team every other year. But
Every other year?
well, I don't know. Like, I'm just really high on Dave Aranda.
Ohio State barely goes to the playoff every other year.
Yeah, that's true.
Baylor's going to be going to the playoff every other year?
Well, probably that was a bad take.
Take
But
the under.
I think they can.
Let's go one time.
Okay. Yeah. But I feel like if that Washington team or that Michigan State teams that made the playoff, I didn't feel like they're that good. So I feel like
Yeah. Those, yeah, I get your point. They weren't elite teams, but they were as good as any Baylor team.
Yeah. With Kansas State, Adrian Martinez, I'm like, well, when I just watch his decision making, I felt like once a game for Nebraska, he just made a decision. I'm like, why? Why did he throw that pass?
See, he's a pretty good quarterback, but if they're down 4 and they need to score a touchdown and he's got to throw every play with 90 seconds on the clock, that's not happening. He's not an accurate enough passer, good enough passer, arm talent. No.
Yeah. Also for Nebraska, if you can get this guy John Johnson on for one show, with the Nebraska guys you have on now,
Johnson.
I think that I'm pretty sure that's his name. He has his own YouTube channel, Coronation, every week after Nebraska lost. He was so funny, self-deprecating.
Well, we'll get him on.
Yeah. He has some brain
know
condition.
These people a lot better than I do. I don't know anyone. I know 3 people.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
For Coronation, there's he was just lying down on the sidewalk after they lost to Iowa. It was just him and his yeah.
Well, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do on my show? Lay down on the sidewalk?
Well, I don't know. Just he also does bring on guys that really know his team, but I just feel like it would be fun to have him on along with the other guys you have on.
Yeah. I'll have anybody on at least once. But yeah, we'll John Johnson. Okay.
Yeah. Coronation. Yeah, he's funny.
Coronation. I thought that was the SB Nation site, was Coronation. We used to have.
Yeah, he has a YouTube channel for the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this puts a damper on things, but this happened a long time back. Our first Nebraska guy that used to come on here from SB Nation, he unfortunately passed away. But that was years and years ago. But he was a good guy. But Coronation, yeah, SB Nation. Okay, very good. John Johnson, got it.
And are you at all worried about Ohio State recruiting after the past week with the people, a couple guys decommitted? It's not the end of the world, but
no.
That
means they lost a couple of players, but it was Tony Gerdeman on Twitter ran that. He's always good for this and other things. He ran the numbers on decommits for Ohio State, and it seems to be in line with what's happened for the last 10 years, and it's turned out fine.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure they'll be fine in Columbus.
Yeah. They've dropped to 4th in the recruiting rankings. Yeah.
I was holding my breath for a while for people decommitting from Notre Dame, but so far so good. But I know Brent Venables, although he came out in a whole video very against players flipping, and then suddenly he's trying to flip one of the Notre Dame top players. I'm like, why can't coaches be held more accountable for their hypocrisy?
I understand your point. I get your point. I'm not saying it's unreasonable, but I don't necessarily agree. So this is the way I see it. He has his standard to say, if you're committing here, we are trying to plan for the future, and we want to make sure that you really want to come here. So don't decide that until you are ready to commit. But if that happens elsewhere where they're not as stringent, then he can go out there and take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I agree with him in terms of a commitment should mean really Really, they should just sign. You know what? I'm going to ruin the entire recruiting game and say, you know what? Just sign on signing day. We don't want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about people flipping or committing to 18 different teams. Just let the recruiting rankings flow on signing day when they really mean something, and there it is. But of course, that would ruin the whole buildup, and that would ruin the entire rivals and 247. They would collapse because there
On
would
three
be
is the worst with the fake news. On three, have you
yeah.
ever looked? They're the worst. They have so much fake news.
Give me an example.
Ridiculous. Like they always say the people are gonna flip, they're gonna flip, and then they never flip.
Well, that's good clickbait.
And also, there's guys on three that work for the teams, and usually, they try to talk to guys to commit to their schools, even though they're just supposed to be reporters. I feel like that's a conflict of interest. You should just report the news fairly and not try to.
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't name any particular teams, but an On3 site writer is also affiliated with the school.
Yeah, like they write for a specific school. And
Well, they're not affiliated with the school. They don't work for the school. What
yeah,
are they
but
like? Are they like student writers for the student newspaper, for example? The site, it's a newspaper, used to be a newspaper, the site. Okay.
yeah. I
Interesting.
just wish that these people actually cared about what was best for the athletes and not about making money.
So again, for example, I want to follow your line of thinking. You're probably right here because yes, people are just in it for themselves. But for example,
Oh, oh, well, I feel like that they try to make all these like players' stories, and like I get that they want to like tell them their stories, but also like them writing the stories is going to be like people are like it's gonna and they player doesn't choose the school that they want them to go to, that they send these players, like fans of teams send these players death threats, and they're like, these aren't even adults yet.
well,
And
that's horrible. Of course, we're just talking about choosing. They're choosing a school to go to school. Now, some of us can chuckle at how serious some of these players are about that, and obviously some of them are not. But actually, most of them, I believe, have some moderate level, or in some cases, many cases, a serious level of commitment to their education.
yeah.
So they're not just choosing a football team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge chunk of it. But yeah, the fans, I wrestle with that to a certain extent because if fans weren't that passionate, then we all wouldn't be here. But
Mm-hmm.
there is a healthy passion.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a dysfunctional, disgusting level where, yeah, people are treated brutally by ignorant and hateful people.
Mm-hmm. And people also like the Alabama fan that poisoned the tree. Like I get it that you love Alabama, but you should not poison Auburn's tree.
People, man, I hate the term "get a life," but that's all I can come up with right now. Is that the people need to become more balanced people
Mm-hmm.
in life.
Mm-hmm. Like love your children as you love your football team. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, got a couple more calls
All
here, but I
right.
appreciate you calling in.
All right. Have a great night, Mark.
You
Excited for
too.
your conference preview. Should be fun.
Will be fun. Thanks, Will.
Bye.
Appreciate it. All right, let's keep things going here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Alabama fan Hunter on the line. Hunter. Hello, Hunter. You with us? All right, I guess we will go to our next call, which is Chris. Hey, Chris. Okay, it would be difficult to believe that we've got two consecutive We've got 2 consecutive calls that there's no audio coming through. Neither one is on mute. Chris, can you hear me? Hello? Can anyone in the chat hear Chris? And I'm missing super chats. I'm sorry. I will get to them. Can anyone hear Chris? Hello, Chris. Why was Will's call fine and now Hunter and Chris's calls aren't? That's odd. Okay. So we've got nothing from Chris. And also now I'm taking Hunter's call. I got them both on here. Okay. Chris, hello.
Yes. Hello.
Chris, how are you?
Good.
You know what I think happened there? I think they both faked me out by calling in, but then they stepped away because I was on with Will. Did you step away, Chris?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. See, that's what happened. So you both stepped away. So I thought there was something wrong with our audio. How you doing tonight?
Good. And I don't know. Eric just made a comment. What a relief. I don't know. I don't like disciplining people, but if I'm really that offensive as a caller, then maybe I shouldn't call you at all, Mark. I just noticed that Eric just made a comment.
Well, here's the deal, Chris. First of all, yes, that is not a nice comment to make. I am respectful of everyone's opinions and respectful of every caller because I'm appreciative that people are calling, that they take the time and value the show enough to give me a call. So that's very nice of you. So we need to respect our callers, but I'm not going to discipline anyone. Unless there are certain hot button type issues that I have disciplined people on, but we are not going into that. But people can be.
Well, I'm no saint, but I hope I'm not disrespectful. If I'm disrespectful to people, Mark, don't let me call or don't even put me on if that's what's happening. I don't really think that disrespect is good for anybody. I would agree. Okay, well. Oh, he said I accused you of being a liar. I don't know. I just. Well, no, he did. He's the one. He mentioned it in the chat again. That I don't know. That was over something that we already talked about. That I just had a difference of opinion about. But I don't know that I'm focused on that. Really, am I? I mean, I don't even really want to talk about it. I just if what I add to your show isn't really what you want, then you can just take me off the air as soon as you want to or whatever.
Well, here's the deal, Chris. To be completely honest, as I always am, that you bring up conversations that the bulk of college football nation is not interested in because we're going back into history and you're kind of going through your various ratings. But I find it interesting to a certain level, but I've got to balance our conversation and the value of our conversation versus what people want to hear.
Oh, okay. Well, I can understand that, and I think you went to Syracuse. Am I not mistaken?
I did not.
Oh, I thought you
did. Kent State.
Well, didn't you go to some broadcast? You studied broadcasting or sports, something like that?
At Kent State.
Oh, I thought it was at Syracuse.
Nope.
Oh, shows what I know. Oh, anyway, I was just going to chime in a little bit on your dark horse prediction. I kind of like that idea. I don't know if you noticed, I sent you an email today. I gave what it was I went back like he told me to, or you didn't tell me to. No, I'm the liar. Like I said I would do, but I went back and I, with the rating, and I guess people don't like the rating. Either they don't like the rating or they don't like me, or maybe a little bit of both. I don't know, but yeah, I'm working really pretty hard on it and doing my best to put the best rating I can. And anyway, I'll just get down to the brass tacks or whatever. I have Air Force last year. Not now, because I'm not good I can't really predict anything. I mean, you asked me to predict a result, I'll probably get it wrong more than I'll get. I'm the opposite of probably what you can do. Ask me to predict a game before it happens, I'll probably get it wrong more than right. But anyway, the rating had Air Force based on how I do it. It all boils down to what I do. But and I've made a few recent changes in it. But I had based on the recent changes I made, I had Air Force at 13 last year total, or finished 13th. I just thought that was interesting because that's and again, you have to take into the fact that I'm taking something that anybody might have a totally different perspective on and might get a totally different result. But the fact they finished 13th, I think, says something about that program, though. I have them finished 13th.
So we can help some people along with what the conversation is here. You have a proficiency rating, or to be more accurate, you took from other elements to develop a proficiency rating, or it's somebody else's proficiency rating. I know every time I bring this up, I get it wrong. It's not your proficiency rating.
It's never been mine.
Okay. It's somebody else's, but you've changed it, altered it, done something?
I don't know that I've really changed it. I mean, yeah, I took what it is. If you go on Sports Reference, see, there's two different ones that I try to use, but they have their own rating, and you go straight to the Sports Reference, and then there's a rate. It's called a Simple Ranking System or something, SRS. And so they already have a rating. But what I do is I take that rating and I change it to where it suits kind of not really what I think, but what I think ought to be. And I know how to do it. So it's not, I just take their rating and I crunch the numbers and it spits out. I mean, that's what I mean. It spits out the result. I'm not taking it and like, I don't think BYU should be 12th. They should be, I'm not like manipulating anything, but anyway, after I crunch the numbers, then it tells their rating tells me what the result is. And
I'm sorry, what you send me is exactly straight from sportsreference.com?
No, it's their data that I take, and then I'm able to change it into something I think is closer to I guess it is closer to what I think it ought to be, but it's not because I don't sit down and make sure that Air Force is higher than what they would be on the rating. I just
what do you change it using?
I don't know that I really change it. I just I take it has a data value associated with each, and if you look at it, you'll see it's like a composite total, and then it's ranked ordinally. I mean, but I take it in and I crunch the numbers based on a formula that I think is fair, and it tells me where the teams finish. And like I said, Air Force was 13th, which I think is pretty high for a team that's not that well known as being that good.
Well, Chris, you sent me a bunch of seasons the other day, and I got to tell you, did I look at them? Kind of, like I glanced at them, but I just am working on a lot of other things. But ironically, I did notice that you had Air Force last season 13, yes, and I believe he had Ole Miss 14. Correct?
Yeah, it must have been, it's possible too, because I have to calculate each one individually. It's possible I made I key them all in. I don't really have time to like double check on any. It's possible maybe I even did it wrong, but I don't know how likely that is, but yeah.
So let me understand, what is this rating measuring? I'm guessing that it's rating the performance of each team versus the difficulty of the schedule.
Well, honestly, the part that I don't know would be the part that the data itself, I don't know how they calculate it. So you would have to, the SRS or whatever, that's not I don't know what it measures. I mean, I'm taking their data and I'm converting it into something that I think is closer to what the teams ought to be.
Okay.
But I don't know what the SRS actually measures. I couldn't really tell you.
Well, excuse me if I'm being a little bit confrontational here, but how would you and why would you change a ratings formula that you don't understand?
I don't have to change it. I mean, they have
I thought you just told me that you take their rating, but you don't take it verbatim. You change it.
I convert it to they include everything except for you're making a good point, Mark. But what I'm trying to get at is they're not able to, for whatever reason, it's almost like they left parts of it out in a way. I mean, they didn't include. I mean, yeah, they give the team's schedule. I mean, not the schedule. They give the one loss, but it doesn't look to me like they really factor that into it at all. I mean, whatever it is that they're calculating doesn't. So I figure, they're already leaving out whether they won any games or not, and so I include that part, and then the other part I think I do is I adjust it because each schedule. Yeah, I adjust it for strength of schedule is the other thing I do. So there's really only two things that I really do, but there's maybe even a question about whether I'm actually even doing that correctly or not, because I had to make another adjustment here just the other day to try to you could say to try to tweak it, but I'm not really trying to tweak anything. I'm just trying to get it closer to what I think the truth ought to be. And so, yeah, in a way, it kind of reflects, I guess what you could probably say is this is kind of my interpretation of what their data is. It's kind of how I interpret it to be.
So the two things that I noticed, and again, you sent me about 5 seasons, and I just kind of,
You should look at them because I think they work. You should look at them.
Well, what causes me to think that they don't work, Chris, besides other conversations we've had concerning this proficiency rating, is that let's go to last year's rankings. Air Force 13, Ole Miss 14.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Air Force has beaten in the past Mississippi, but that's not what I'm doing though. I'm not looking at, it has nothing to do with what I think a team ought to be as far as, well, I think Air Force is better than, but
it also should have nothing to do with whether Air Force beat Ole Miss 35 years ago. That is nothing.
It doesn't. But I guess the point I'm making is, I don't know that simply, and I noticed that too, by the way, Mark. I mean, you're actually kind of bringing up something I kind of thought of myself after I looked. It's also possible too that I'm using a pocket calculator. You punch one key wrong and you get the wrong, it's very possible I even maybe miscalculated. I don't really think I did, but I didn't have time to go back and double check at each team. So it's possible I put Air Force too high unintentionally, but.
Okay. Let's say you didn't. Let's say your formula, which is the SRS plus whatever you do to tweak that, and you did all the calculations correctly. Last season, Air Force. Last season, let me finish my statement, please. Air Force was number 13 at 10-3. Ole Miss was number 14 at 10-3. What is the obvious mistake there? The obvious mistake is that Ole Miss is playing in the best conference in America. They are playing one of the more difficult schedules in the country, and they went 10-3. They played Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and they played Baylor in a bowl game. They played Louisville out of conference. Air Force doesn't play anything that's in the same stratosphere as that. Why is Air Force ranked ahead of any rating system that had last year's Air Force team with the same record as Ole Miss ranked ahead of Ole Miss is obviously seriously flawed?
It's possible, yeah. You're not. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm just telling you that after I crunched the numbers, whether and like I said, I don't know if I made a mistake or not. The only thing I can tell you is generally when I notice things like that, then I go back and I find out, that's why it's generally I do tend to find out where I messed up. So but even if I didn't mess up, I don't really have a good answer for you. But I don't know how SRS works, first of all. So I can't really, and I don't know how effective it is as far as rating a team anyway. But assuming I did it correctly, which I don't know, I can't say I know that it works correctly. It might just simply say that whatever they're evaluating is roughly the same for both. Whatever it is that the SRS evaluates, which I don't even know for sure what it would be, is that it means the roughly.
Before I bid you adieu tonight, I'm going to say this: to keep everyone in the chat as engaged as we possibly can during our conversations when you call, we're going to have to take a small little slice of your work and have a discussion about it. Like, we're going to have to say, let's look at the top 10 rankings from last season on this proficiency rating, and let's see if there are any issues or oddities or anything, so people understand what we're talking about.
Well,
I guarantee people
this is brand new stuff I just gave you. This isn't old. You're making it sound like I regurgitated something. And
I'm not making anything sound anything. I'm saying that people have no context of what you're talking about when you come on and start diving into 1984 or whatever year. I'm just telling you, Chris, that people in the chat or people watching, and then we have like 3,000 or 4,000 people that will be watching this video. They will have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, my intention is to try to get it to where it's something people might want to talk about, but I'm not doing it for myself. I just, if there's anybody that, like I said, that might be interested in it, I think I'm doing it the best I know how. And like I said, if I did it incorrectly, I'll look and after I am kicked off or whatever. I'll go back and look and see whether I did it right or not. But I would never put it out there if I thought I did it wrong. So I mean, you
Well, I
wait.
know you wouldn't. I've done the same thing. I've made mistakes in calculations that I've made on videos, and then I don't feel right about that, but I made the miscalculation. So,
Well, 10-3 is 10-3. I mean, that might be part of why they're about the same. I mean, 10-3 and 10-3. I mean,
well, 10-3 and 10-3 is not the same when you play in two completely different levels of football.
well, that might be it, Mark. It might be that you're being a little bit. I don't want to call you prejudiced, but I mean, maybe
the SEC is the SEC, and the Mountain West is the Mountain
Well,
West.
go back and
Two
look.
entirely different levels of football.
Go back and look and see what Air Force's record is against the SEC. I don't even know.
I don't care what it is. Air Force would not go 10-3 in the SEC if all those teams play their third stringers.
I don't know that I ever even remotely said that would be what would happen. I'm just saying that whatever it is that it evaluates, I guess, is about the same for either one, if I did it correctly, which I probably didn't. You're probably right. I probably didn't, but I tried the best I could, did the very best. I spent a lot of time trying to make it as comprehensive as I could. The other thing, if you don't mind, if I could bring it up before you kick me out, I noticed there were about 70, as far as I can tell, better than by this formula that you seem to think isn't very good, that are better than I guess, than Nebraska.
When I look at one scenario and I see that Air Force is ranked ahead of Ole Miss last season, then what's that going to lead me to believe?
Maybe, like I said, just look and see what Air Force's record is against. I think they even played Mississippi. I don't know who won.
I don't care, Chris. That doesn't matter. Army was the best football team in America in the 1940s. That doesn't mean that they are now. Those results you're bringing up with Air Force playing Ole Miss in some bowl game in 1987 doesn't matter in the 2021 proficiency ratings. What's that have to do with?
Well, I'm not sure if you're attacking me or if you're attacking the rating or if you're attacking history or if
I'm attacking the rating and then you defending the rating by bringing up games from 35 years ago when you're talking about the rating for 2021.
Well, it's Air Force against Ole Miss. I don't know. It's kind of like the argument we had about BYU and Southern Methodist. I mean, does it have to be this year that they beat them for the game against?
If we're talking about this year.
Well, I'm talking about next year, or this coming year is actually kind of what
at the end of the season. At the end of this season, I will unveil rankings just like the AP poll and all sorts of people will unveil rankings. And I'm not going to say, you know what, Army went 4-8, but man, they had a hell of a football program in 1945 and they had back-to-back national championship teams. So I'm going to rank them 8th.
Well, I don't rank them anywhere. I mean, you're making it like it's me. I'm not really doing it. Okay. I mean, in a way I kind of am, but it's not like I sit down and say, well, I think Air Force should probably be top 15. I better make sure. That's not what I do. So
but you're defending the ranking based on results you're bringing up from 30 or 40 years ago. What's that have to do with 2021?
Well, all right. You're asking me to, and I'll try to answer the question. It might be, and maybe the SEC isn't quite as good as everybody thinks it is. Maybe that's the answer.
That's not the answer. It's not the answer.
Well, you can put them on a pedestal, Mark, but
I don't have to put them on a pedestal. It's the best conference in America. There's no argument.
Oh, I think I agree with that, but maybe head to head, maybe put those two teams together. Maybe Air Force will lose 50-0, but we don't know until you do.
Well, Lord, you don't understand the logic and common sense in saying that Ole Miss went 10-3, and they play in the best conference in America. And
I think people can look
into Air Force. Let me finish my statement. Went 10-3, and they've played in the 6th best conference in America. That's eons behind the SEC. Why is Air Force ranked ahead of Ole Miss? Therefore, the system doesn't make any sense.
I think it was the 7th best, but whatever. Yeah, I think you're right. 7th. They were behind the American, so they'd be the 7th best conference.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, thanks for calling, Chris.
You're welcome.
Okay, we got Hunter on the line. Hunter, what's going on? Okay. Hunter called in and he's still backstage, but he must not be, I don't know what he's doing. All right, we've got Michael, I believe, on the line.
Hang on. Hang on, Mark. Can you hear me?
Not well.
I can hear you.
Can
perfect.
everybody hear Michael in the chat?
Is that better now? I muted myself, so on
I'm
YouTube.
going to, I can hear you okay.
All right.
I will let everybody else answer in the chat as to whether they can hear you. Okay.
All
How you doing
right.
tonight?
Not too bad, but hey, Mark, what's your drink of choice
My drink of choice?
when it comes to adult beverages?
Here's my history of adult beverages. So I never gained any kind of appreciation for the taste of beer. I think it's disgusting. Did I drink it back at one point in my life? Yes. So do you know when I drink now? I drink now when I'm in the company of a young lady. That's when I drink. When I am with a
when you're out, basically.
significant other.
Yeah.
When I'm with a significant other and they typically enjoy wine and I drink wine with a significant other. That's been my drinking life for the last 10 or 15 years.
The reason why I'm saying that after that last call, I might want to go across the street to the chocolate shop and drink me a few beers and tequila tonight. Oh my God, Mark, I cannot.
Chris just has an issue trying to condense his information into a reasonable topic.
Mm-hmm. And I can see your point about Minnesota and stuff like that, maybe. But is Air Force going to be the best service school this year, academy school this year, or do you think Army and Navy can bounce back?
Well, Army had a good team last year.
Yeah,
Navy did not, but didn't Army go 10-3, 11-2?
I'm not sure.
One or the other. 10-3
I can't remember who won the Commanders in Chief trophy.
I believe that Air Force is the best military academy, and I can't say that I've put research into it, but Air Force is the best of the three, I believe, this season.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible maybe they can get a New Year's 6 this year?
Sure, it's possible.
But
they're going to have to be the best group of 5 team.
Mm-hmm. But well, because I think they got a lot to contend with what, Houston and maybe Cincinnati this year.
Yeah, probably those two. Maybe UCF. Maybe Fresno State or Boise State in their own conference.
Okay. Now I was just wondering stuff like that. Another thing I was asking, yeah, I know Purdue, I'm having stuff like that, but is it more likely that Purdue will maybe get a decent New Year's Day, but not a New Year's 6 if they get to the Big Ten championship?
If they win the Big Ten championship, run that by me again.
All right. Say like they win the Big Ten West.
Yes.
But they're somewhat respectable against Ohio State. Yeah, I'm a Purdue fan, and I know they're not going to, even though they're the only team since 2000 that has a winning record against Ohio State. But I don't think they're going to be able to beat them. But regardless, do you think winning the Big Ten West is enough for them to maybe get a New Year's 6?
Sure. Unless they do what Iowa did last year and get crushed in the championship game, and you already tackled that issue.
Yeah.
But if there are better teams in the East, then they're going to take up those spots, just like they did last year with Ohio State and Michigan State went in front of Iowa. And you love that stat that Purdue has a winning record against Ohio State since 2000, and you should. That's a great stat. So they won the Drew Brees game, and I just watched the documentary on that the other night.
Yesterday. Yep.
Yeah, I watched it a few days ago, but it was on the 2000 Purdue team, and I can't think of the receiver who caught the bomb. Seth Morales. Yes, absolutely. So you had the 2000 win, and then I think Ohio State beat Purdue. Well, of course, there was the Holy Buckeye game, the 0-2 game.
Yeah.
That Ohio State won on a 4th down that they needed to, of course, go to the next championship game.
I will still say I still would have tackled Michael Jenkins and drove the pass interference penalty before he caught the ball.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Ohio State won in 0-3. They won a close game in Columbus against Purdue in 0-3.
Yeah, I think that was an overtime game where Orton fumbled, I think.
But then Purdue came back the next year, as you well know, and beat Ohio State the second to last game of the season. So there's 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue in overtime beat an Ohio State team that eventually won the Big Ten championship and won the Rose Bowl against Oregon in 2009.
Yeah.
And then they also won in 2011. I believe it was in overtime against Braxton Miller in Ohio State in West Lafayette. So that's what 4-2.
And then 2018 is when the Tyler Trent game.
But one of Urban Meyer's teams beat.
Yeah, it was I think it was the
Purdue
2011 team where they beat shut out Purdue. I think it was like 49-0.
Yeah. And then they won the overtime. These teams played a lot of overtime games. Ohio State beat Purdue in overtime in 2012 with Kenny Guyton.
Yeah.
The quarterback. And then
the 2018 game and then
last year's game. That's it. So it must be what, like 5-4?
5-4, yes.
Okay. Very cool.
Yep. But I wonder what it is, though. Even though, I mean, yeah, there have been some blowouts on both sides and stuff like that. But since I can remember in 1980, what is it with Purdue and Ohio State such a competitive? Did they just match up perfect or something?
Does Purdue match up well with Ohio State?
Yeah, because if you look, yeah, there's some blowouts on both sides, but there's also been a lot of close games too.
Wait a minute.
No,
when is Purdue blown out Ohio State?
Well, there was like I think they did in 84. They played a few times in the 80s and stuff like that.
28-23. No, Purdue.
No. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, yeah, what I'm saying is there's been some blowouts on both sides in the past.
No, there haven't been blowouts there have been blowouts on Ohio State's side.
But there's also, what I'm saying is, there's also been a lot of close games. That's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. There have been a ton of close games. Yeah.
But what makes it usually a close game with Purdue and Ohio State?
Because you're asking that because Ohio State has a huge series record against everybody else?
I'm just saying, since I've been going to Purdue games in like the 80s and stuff like that, it's usually a close game.
Well, throughout the 80s, I'd say Ohio State was slightly better if you take the entire 1980s, but not better by much. So they had difficult matchups with Purdue. And then Purdue actually was better. They're in like 87, 88 in that range, 89.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State beat them in 89. Anyway, beat them in 86. Anyway, Purdue was better for a few years there, not by much. But if you take the entirety of the 80s, Ohio State wasn't that much better than Purdue, a little bit better over the course of the entire decade. Purdue didn't win a Big Ten championship in the 80s, and Ohio State won, I'd have to count them up, but about 4. And then into the 90s, Ohio State killed Purdue in the 90s.
Yeah, there was in the 90s and stuff like that.
Because Purdue was, until Joe Tiller, of course, showed up, Purdue was down for a good 6 or 8 years, and Ohio State had great teams in the mid 90s, and they had some big scores against Purdue.
Yeah,
and then of course Tiller showed up and Drew Brees and a string of capable, really good quarterbacks and passing offenses, and they gave Ohio State fits. If I think you understand this comment, and I believe you could agree with this, that I give Purdue all the credit in the world for having a 5-4 edge over Ohio State in the last 20 years. And then also that the series is fairly close, even if you go back about 40 years. But I think you understand that if they played every year, the series wouldn't be nearly as close.
Yeah, it would be skewed towards Ohio State and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to figure out, though, since 2000, what is it with Purdue having more success against Ohio State than the rest of the teams in the Big Ten? And 3 of those wins a couple of them came against Tiller and stuff like that. But I just wondering why they've had so much success in the 2000s compared to other teams in the Big Ten.
Well, of course, Purdue's had more success against top 5 teams as an unranked team than anybody in the country.
Yep. I was just wondering stuff like. I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be a fun. And I like to see it in a competitive game, but something just tells me that it's going to kind of be like maybe like last year with the 59-31.
Wait, it's you said it's 5-4 since 2000? Because I forgot about last year's game. So Ohio State's only won 4 times. 02, 03. They've won more than.
Hang on, let me look at.
Yeah, they 02, 03. Then they won an Urban Meyer won like a 56-0 game. And then they also won an OT game in 12. I think Ohio State's got 5.
Is it 5-5 now?
I believe so.
Hang on here.
Everybody, talk amongst yourselves. Michael and I are figuring out the Purdue Ohio State series since the year 2000. It's very important. Okay, what do we have coming in here? We've got
I guess I'm really
it's 5-5, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it 5-5 since 2000? I don't know about that.
I just know Ohio State's won 5. I don't know what Purdue's won. Did they win in what? 2000, 04,
04, 09, 2011, and 2018.
It's 5-5.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Michael?
Other than that, hey, if you decide, if you need me to drink you a glass of wine or tequila tonight, let me know after the last caller.
That is entirely up to you, Michael.
All right. I was just wondering something like that. Oh, is Dennis really hard to get a hold of?
Who?
Dennis.
Dennis who? Oh, Dennis. Take that offline. All right, Michael.
Right, sorry.
Thanks
all right, Mark. Thanks, man. Take care.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. So, unfortunately, I crushed Michael's sense of pride there in Purdue having a winning record against Ohio State in the last 20 years, since 2000. It is 5-5. All right, next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Studio One Live. Hello.
What's going on, man?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
A lot of stuff. You know, football's about to get started, brain scrambling. But I wrote down a few little topics here so we can keep the show going. First thing I want to ask, do you think the fans hate the portal and NIL because it threatens their favorite player just leaving their school and they get quality?
People don't like it for 2 basic reasons. Well, I'll throw out 3 basic reasons. Number 1, people don't like change. Most people don't like change. They want things to stay the same. Number 2, people are jealous. People are inherently jealous. And we're generally, I hate to say this about the human race, we're generally jealous, proud. We don't like to see people doing better than we are. So we don't want to see as a 50-year-old that's slaving away at some factory or whatever. I shouldn't even put an age or a job criteria on it, but seeing some 21-year-old make $1 million. And number 3, and I think this is the third one's a fairly healthy place to be, that we watch college football and we're used to. So think about this. When you're watching your favorite NFL team or you're watching any NFL game on Sunday or Monday night and they're reading off, at the beginning of the game when they're going through the starting lineups and they have the guys state where they went to college, we like to know that, we're a Michigan fan and Charles Woodson went to Michigan. That's the only place he went. It's where he played all his football. Barry Sanders, Oklahoma State. That's it. He didn't go play at Texas Tech or go play at Wisconsin or anywhere else. No, Oklahoma. And those players aren't going to be able to do that in 5 years, 10 years. We're not going to see that on Monday Night Football. And we like to know that our guys were always our guys. And you don't have that in the NFL, and we always had that in college football, and now we don't.
That's a good point. I ain't think about it like that, right? Because especially as a Miami fan, we got some of these alumnus that like they are Canes for life. But now it just brings a question: Are you really a fan of just players, or are you a real fan of this university? Because this is the other side now. Because it could feed the fire of, all right, you left our school. Now I'm ready to crush whatever school you went to. So it'll heat the rivalry. Like I would think it would do that at least. Make these fans mad at the player. I hate them sending out that hate mail, like you said, threat mails and all that. That's out of hand. But I think it should feed the rivalry, because if you're a loyal Hurricane, you love the university. Ohio State, you love Ohio State. You know what I mean? If a player leaves, you're not gonna all of a sudden say you don't like Ohio State. You know what I mean? So, but I think people should understand that now the NIL, the more money they make, the longer they're going to stay in your school now. So that's another flip side of it, It's
a good point.
All right. So let me ask you a question with the dark horse. You said this title is. Do you think Miami could be considered a dark horse if they make the playoffs?
Well, you see, when I was going dark horse, I was going like serious. See,
that's the point I want to make. Miami should be serious because they ain't done nothing.
No, they haven't, but they've got the talent to do it, and they play in a division that they should own this year. They should. I've said that every year almost, that they should own. So I put Miami more in the Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, Texas dark horse.
I got you.
I was really reaching for dark horses.
I got you. You know what the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12 should do? They should merge, call it the AC3, the American Coast to Coast Conference. They will that's the only way I think they will be able to compete with this race of the SEC and the Big, and it'll shake up something. All of a sudden Notre Dame be like, oh, wait a minute. Do we want to go back to the ACC or I mean? So, and it logistically it makes sense because you got the middle, Big 12, you got the ACC on the East Coast, the Pac-12 West, and they could kind of, mingle the different matchups. Sometimes the middle play the West, and every now and then the East go to the West and the West go to the East. But it'll be logistically a little bit easier on them. Opposed to being the ACC and just the Pac-12, Big 12 merge, they take, and then the group of five need to just form their own championship series. And then we'll all watch some good evil level playing football.
All right, let's go back to your first idea with the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-10. So you're going to have a conference with, what is it, 38 teams?
Well, I think this is going to be like the situation with the college teams with this portal and the scholarships. Some teams have to let some players go. Some teams, they have to look at them and say, like Miami, they had to force some people to transfer. It might be still some people that's not going to make the cut now. You know what I'm saying? So some of these teams might not make the cut. They might have to go down in the group of five. Some of these schools, Kansas, they've been playing like group of five type of football for, I don't know which schools will fall into that category because it's not more than football, but.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, who you think?
Kansas is probably the worst football playing school out of those three conferences, but they're one of the best basketball playing schools. And you're going to have 38 members to this conference. You're going to trim that down to what?
Well, let me ask you a question. So SEC is trying to stretch it to how many now? With they trying to all get up to 20 plus.
I threw out a 24 team SEC the other day.
Ooh, so that means roughly 10, 12, 13 teams have to be cut.
Here's the other problem you're going to run into. So you got these three conferences that are going to merge. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about selfishness and pride and all that? What are we going to name this conference? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be the commissioner?
Political nightmare. I think that's probably part of the reason none of these conferences merged yet. They're all trying to just hang on to, the powers that be don't want to lose those powers, like you said. Two of the commissioners or two of these power, they're gonna lose power. You know what I'm saying? And they don't want that, so they're trying to hang on. And I don't see no hope for the Pac-12. I think the Big 12. Let me ask you a question. Out of the two conferences, I think ACC could survive. Big 12, Pac-12. Who crumbles first?
Oh, the Pac-12.
Is it possible Pac-12, Big 12 merge and then kick the ACC all of a sudden looking on the outside looking in?
I believe that the Big 12 is safe.
On what behalf?
This is why the Big 12 is safe. I believe it's safe. I'm not guaranteeing this. Anything can happen. We've seen anything happen.
Yeah, on what this behalf is.
Who wants to take any teams from the Big 12?
So you mean, are you asking how many more teams are left good enough to go to the SEC or the Big 10? Is that?
Yes.
You make me want to look up the Big 12 conference now.
So my point is that the Big 12's mediocrity is almost saving it because nobody wants to pick off the rest of those teams.
I got you. Ooh, it's looking dismal. This is a powerful Group of 5 conference. Temple, Houston, SMU, Cincinnati, East Carolina, South Florida, all those.
No. You're looking at the American Conference.
Thank you. Sorry. Whoa. West Virginia, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma. Yeah, okay. They still got, Oklahoma's leaving. Texas leaving. So you got Texas Tech, TCU. I don't know, man. And let me grab this Pac-12. Ooh. Yeah. The Big 12 do look a little bit more stoutier. Because USC leaves. Once USC leaves, Oregon leaves, it's over for the Pac-12. Washington better hurry up. So it's going to be just 3 conferences then in about 3 years. Who knows?
3. You're tearing down the Big 12 and the Pac-12.
I think, in about 5 years, one of them they're gonna dissolve and it's gonna be a merger. I don't see when I'm looking at those colleges, unless one or two of those colleges in the next 2 years, their program all of a sudden just rises to the occasion. Washington has that ability. Who else has that ability? UCLA is leaving. Nobody else. Washington State, Oregon State, Colorado. Colorado used to be back in their days, and I don't know, man.
Well, there's one major issue with our conversation. The major issue is that we're only talking about football. There is academics and culture to consider. A lot of those schools don't want to be in bed with some of those other schools in those other conferences because of cultural and academic considerations.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Studio One. I appreciate you being here.
You like you're getting a little bit sleepy, boy, getting towards the midnight hour.
Well, give me a call anytime.
Yes, sir.
You have a good one. And now we've got what I would term a familiar face, but we can't see his face tonight. So familiar name and Corey Bratta. Corey.
Mark, it was 49-20 in 2018. What are you talking about? Purdue hasn't blown out Ohio State. Is 29 points not a blowout?
Compared to Ohio State's blowouts of Purdue?
29-point margin, Mark? Come on now.
Okay, when I'm talking about historically, I'm talking about in general, not breaking down every single game in the series. If you count up the number of times, if you look at the point differential, they're two completely different teams. There's just no comparison.
I believe you said that Purdue has not blown out Ohio State.
I meant that they do. I know what the scores. I could recite all the scores during my lifetime of Ohio State.
I cannot. I had to look it up.
Yes. I understand the score was 49-20 a few years ago in 2018. I mean, historically, Ohio State has repeatedly blasted Purdue, like over and over and over and over and over, dozens and dozens of times in the series history. But for Purdue to beat Ohio State badly, it's happened a couple times. Yes, it happened in 1987. They beat them like 34-12. There you go. There's another one. But I mean, every team that plays in a conference has beaten every team badly at some point in its history. Any two schools in the nation that play in a conference and have been in that conference together for 60, 70 years, there has been a blowout on each side in the series. I guarantee that. Did Corey leave us? What happened here? Oh, Corey, you left us.
Sorry, I didn't leave. It booted me out temporarily. Oh. Yeah, no, the main reason I wanted to bring that up is it still does, that 49-20 score still pales in comparison to 55-24. Let me just say this real quick.
Well, no, it doesn't. What do you mean? They're pretty much the same. It's almost exactly the same points.
Well, to some extent, the circumstances surrounding each game were very, very different. Very different, and you know that. Right? One game, we're talking about a Purdue team with a historically dynamic receiver in Rondale Moore.
Sure.
I think you and I can both agree that the 2017 game was such an anomaly because Iowa really, besides tight end, there probably wasn't a position on the field that you could say Iowa was even close to Ohio State, and as far as talent is concerned.
You could say the same thing about those two.
Well, I don't know. Purdue, that was a Rondale Moore, David Bell year, right? Correct?
Was David Bell on that team?
2018? Yeah, absolutely.
I guarantee that Ohio State's 2018 roster had more NFL wide receivers than Purdue's.
Well, I don't know. Okay, but
absolutely it did.
We're talking about college. If we're talking about
come on, Corey.
college receivers, Mark.
That Purdue team lost a bowl game in which they gave up 49 points in the first half. They went 6-7. That was not a good team. They had a super magical night. That Iowa team, your Iowa team of 2017 was better than the Purdue team of 2018.
Not much better, Mark. 8-5, and that team lost to Purdue.
8-5 is better than 6-7. And that 8-5 team, I'm guaranteeing, didn't get embarrassed like Purdue did.
Well, in 2017, Iowa lost to Purdue, and in 2018, Iowa lost to Purdue. Okay. But regardless, I'm just saying I don't think it gets much better than Rondale Moore and David Bell at receiver. But I don't know. I really don't even know what we're arguing at this point. What we're debating at this point.
I stated that Purdue didn't blow out Ohio State. I meant,
yeah,
I should have been clear with my statement. Yes, I know that there were blowouts in the series, but.
So let me ask you this, Mark, because I'll stick to the topic of the show and then I'll let somebody else get in here. I heard you.
Actually, real quick. So our buddy Michael Hogue, he is way off on this series. So he is happy because he can say Purdue's got a winning record against Ohio State. They're the only team in the Big Ten since 2000, and he had it at 5-4. And then we just went through. I don't know if you heard this phone call. Well, you obviously did.
And I caught the tail end of it.
So Michael's happy because Purdue has competed against Ohio State better than anyone in the Big Ten. And according to him, it was 5-4 Purdue since 2000. And so then I started going through the games and I came up with 5 Ohio State wins. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't think your numbers are correct. So we came up with 5-5. Now I am on Winsipedia. I'm finding 2 more Ohio State wins. So suddenly this 5-4 Purdue advantage since 2000 has become 7-5 Ohio State. Just college football fans typically forget about. So we are missing a 49-0 Ohio State win from 2010. These are the kind of games I'm talking about. And Ohio State won a couple of years later, 56-0.
So again, let me argue semantics for a second, Mark.
Okay.
Now I did not catch the first part of Michael's conversation, but if we're arguing who has competed with Ohio State, the best in the conference, it's not Purdue. I don't care. They may have the most wins per number of matchups, but there's a 49-0. If we're just talking total margin, win-loss margin, I would guess there's at least 3 or 4 teams that have a better win-loss margin total based on playing Ohio State close. Maybe not winning games.
Penn State.
Penn State, and Mark, I think Iowa is on that list. I bet you Iowa's win-loss margin is better than Purdue's against the Buckeyes.
Well, I just went through it, and Michael, if you're still listening, your 5-4 is now 9-5. So you've missed 5 Ohio State wins. So this proves anybody can go on and say anything they want.
No, Mark, it wasn't 5. He didn't say 5-4. He said 4-5.
No, No. He said 5-4 Purdue, and then I came up with a 5th Ohio State win.
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you credit. What I'm saying is he said 5-4. It's turned into 5. What he said was 5-4 is actually turned into 5-9, not 9-5.
I got you. Yes. Yeah. So this is my memory failing me. Now I look at the scores. I remember all these games, but so Ohio State played them. Yeah, they did. Ohio State and Purdue have not just played 9 times in 22 seasons. They played 14 times.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask you is who do you think, if you had to guess, who has the best margin of win-loss, if that makes sense, versus
points. Margin.
Correct. Yeah. Literally just looking at, points for and against, who has the best ratio against the Buckeyes in this century? Because I think, honestly, I think if I had to guess, my top 3, just rattling that off, would probably be Penn State and maybe Iowa, Michigan State, maybe. Because all I know is just my own recollection of Ohio State games. You and I've talked about this. Very rarely has there been blowouts in that series.
True.
Which is odd, but it just hasn't happened much.
But let's understand before we look at this, because I'm pulling up the Ohio State-Iowa series right now. It's 46-15 all time. But there is a difference between playing once every 3 years, 3 years out of 9, versus having to play every year.
Correct.
So
I understand that. And if you wanted to look at average, you just wanted to average them out, that's different. And that would sort of take care of that sample size issue. But let's be honest too, when you win by 31, like Iowa did in 2017, that makes up for quite a bit. Does that make up for how many losses does that make up from a margin standpoint? How many losses does that make up for, Mark?
Well, let's see. Let's do the Kirk Ferentz era. Ohio State 41-11 in 99. Ohio State 38-10 in 2000.
Those are going to be the 2 anomalies that are going to make it difficult for Iowa. In that, obviously anybody knows Iowa history. Those first 2 years, especially 99, were terribly rough.
Ohio State 19-10 in 03. Iowa 33-7 in 04. Ohio State 31-6 in 05. Ohio State 38-17 in 06. Ohio State 27-24 in 09. You remember well.
Absolutely.
Ohio State 20-17. And
hey, hold on. Before we go on, can I just say this? And I don't want to drive away viewers, but 2009, I think maybe Kirk Ferentz's number one regret, from a decision-making standpoint, is running out the clock at the end of regulation in 2009 instead of going for a score. You're tied up at 24-24, and they got 45 seconds left. And you've got, James Vandenberg is a freshman quarterback who had never played a game, but he played the game of his life. You've got Marvin McNutt and DJK and Tony Moyaki, and they run the ball and run out the clock and go to overtime and lose on a kick, Mark. And Kirk has talked about that decision to run that ball. That was one of the worst decisions in his history.
And then after that was simply, then the next year, of course, they were again playing for a share of a Big Ten championship, and Ohio State won 20-17.
2013 was close for a while, although it made what was the final score then?
34-24.
Yeah.
And then the Iowa blowout in 17. So that's what do we have here? We've got
that's hard to add. There's actually more blowouts than I thought for both sides. I forgot Iowa blew out in 2004.
8-2 Ohio State versus Kirk Ferentz. I'm going to guarantee that that's his worst record against any Big Ten opponent. 2-8.
True, but again, talking just win margin, Iowa's 2 wins were blowouts.
Yeah,
which is odd. So, anyways, so the final thing. This is the final thing I was going to bring up. You told the previous caller that Miami is not a really dark horse because they're a legitimate. They're a legitimate dark horse contender. They're not like a far-fetched contender, right?
Yeah,
is that fair?
The teams that I served up tonight are not going to a college football playoff. They're not even great teams or really, really good teams. I
missed it, Mark. I'm gonna have to go back because I missed the teams.
I knew that if I threw out the topic, and I already have this offseason, dark horse contenders for the college football playoff, everybody's going to throw me Penn State, Oregon, Baylor, Oklahoma State, NC State. And that's reasonable. I'm not criticizing that. Those are the reasonable teams that have yet to make a playoff, or in Oregon's case, going back to 2014, and that are good teams. And you can see Utah would be one that, going past that 4, 5, or 6 that always make the playoff, that would be that next tier of teams that people talk about. But I wanted to really, really go into the closet, and I pulled out 4 teams. Yes. One in the Big Ten.
Can you tell me who they are? Or are you going to make me go back?
Oh, Oregon State, Kansas State, Minnesota, and Air Force.
So you went like Bat Cave dark horse.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. So the Oregon State one is really out of left field. Had they landed JT Daniels, I could have at least seen an argument there, but I don't know how that's. I think there's a greater chance that they don't even make it to 4 wins than it is that they I'd say there's a greater chance they don't make it to 3 wins and make a playoff, Mark. I don't even know their schedule, but don't you think there's a greater chance they don't make it to 3 wins?
Yes.
Okay.
There is.
So where is Iowa then? It again, for anybody that doesn't know, I am, this. I'm not. When do I ever make some push that Iowa's going to make a playoff? But I am curious, given the schedule and just given Iowa as a program, do they fall in that same category as Miami, Penn State, or are they a notch below for this year?
I believe, based on how good I think this roster is, I believe they are a notch below that tier. They're above this tier, except maybe Minnesota, but they're above these other teams, yes, that I'm grasping for.
I think it's insulting to Minnesota that you put them in the same conversation as Oregon State.
Okay, I wasn't thinking it through to that degree.
PJ Fleck would be very disappointed in you, Mark.
He would be, wouldn't he? Well,
He would. So I would say, I without having Penn State's schedule in front of me, I would tend to agree with you. But knowing that Penn State plays in the tougher of the divisions, even though Iowa's got a tough crossover, I think that Penn State and Iowa are more often than not probably on that same tier as far as if you were to give probabilities. And we talked about last year, as bad as Iowa was offensively, they were not far. Like, people want to laugh at that. They were not far from making a playoff. They were in playoff consideration heading into championship weekend, Mark. And that is the honest truth. Had the chips fallen in their direction, had they beaten Michigan, which of course we know did not happen, there was a lot of things that could have happened that week. And Iowa could have slipped into the playoff. Like, that's how close it is. When you win 10, 11 games in the West, I don't care if you're in the West or not, you're in a Power 5 conference, specifically the second best conference in the country. You're going to give yourself a chance you can win that division.
okay. To me, there's a difference between playoff contention and what you're framing there. Iowa in 2015 was in serious, legitimate playoff contention. Last year, I think both you and I, pretty much on the same day during the week of the Big Ten championship game, because either I contacted you or you contacted me with this, and I believe you contacted me to say, am I crazy to think Iowa can make the playoff? And I was like, I'm looking at that. Like, right now, I'm thinking, yes, I'm going to produce content that's going to pave a path for Iowa to make the playoff. So it was possible, but they weren't. They would have had to have a lot of things fall their way.
You know what? I produced a video. Not that anybody's going to care and go back to watch my channel, Mark, but
Here they are.
I at this point, I produced a video with a whiteboard and everything, and it really wasn't that far fetched. Mark, like, a lot of the things that could have happened, like the Baylor Oklahoma State game. I think, if I recall, I'd have to go back, but I think who won that game? Who won Baylor Okie State?
Baylor.
Okay, Baylor won that game. That was that win in Iowa's favor. Iowa needed Houston to beat Cincinnati. That did not happen. Iowa, of course, needed to beat Michigan. I don't remember how many. I think certainly Georgia needed to beat Alabama. Those things were not that far-fetched. Now, granted, when you need all of them to happen, it lowers the percentage that they're all going to happen. I mean, certainly the chances that all of those things falling in place decrease. But I'm just saying, it really wasn't that far-fetched.
Even though this is a conversation about last season and something that did not happen, I just want to have it anyway. Okay, because I did the same thing that you did. And I don't know if I produced a video or I just explained it on here maybe. But let's say Cincinnati would have lost. So that wipes them out. Let's say, as did happen, Baylor won. So they won the Big 12 with 2 losses. And then Iowa beat Michigan, 2 losses for Iowa, 11-2. Georgia beats Alabama, so that knocks out Alabama. Or let's put that on hold for a second in terms of knocking out Alabama.
They were out. Mark, you're out. You're at 2 losses and you're an SEC non-champion. You're not taking them over a 2-loss Big Ten champion. And if you do, it's heresy.
Wonder where Iowa started that day in the college football playoff.
I think it would be really difficult to put in Alabama a 2-loss non-champion. I'm just saying, maybe they would have. Maybe the committee would have done that, because certainly the committee has proven some bias as it relates to the SEC. I mean, I think about the Ohio State snub several years back, but I remember thinking the same thing. Is there any way they take it? And I remember thinking that too, Mark. It would have helped had Georgia not only won but blown out Alabama. Like, style points would have mattered there if you're talking about Iowa's playoff chances.
So you're looking at a scenario in which the playoff then would have been Georgia. Well, you got to consider this would have brought Notre Dame back into the picture because they went 11-1.
Yes, correct, but non-champions. I don't care. They were 10-2, correct?
11-1.
Okay, they were 11-1. So you're right. So I remember breaking that same thing down and saying, okay, in this scenario, if all these things happen, if Georgia beats Alabama, and Baylor beats Oklahoma State, Iowa beats Michigan, and Houston beats Cincinnati, then you're looking at a scenario where, okay, you've got 2 spots to fill. You've got Georgia at 1. You've got who would have been 2? Who would have been the other lock at that point?
Notre Dame.
Well, I don't know that Notre Dame's a lock at 11-1 over a 10-2 Big Ten champion at that point.
It sounds like your playoff was going to be Georgia, Notre Dame, Iowa, and Baylor.
Well, I don't know that. I guess what I'm saying is you had at least 2 spots to fill with teams. You had at least assuming Notre Dame's in at that point, 11-1. Then you're filling 2 spots with the likes of an 11-2 Big 12 champion in Baylor, an 11-2 Big 10 champion in Iowa, and in a 11-2 non-SEC champion in Alabama. Just saying that's legitimate. And honestly, you could argue based upon, I'm not saying that everybody watches me knows I don't think Iowa was one of the top 4 teams in the country. That's not the argument you and I are making here.
No.
But my point is, I think you could look at that and say Iowa was the most attractive of the three teams as it relates to resume, simply because they were a Big Ten champion. Big Ten, I think, is perceived as the better conference over the Big 12, and regardless of the SEC's position, like I said, a non-champion, especially if Alabama had lost in a landslide. I hope people who are watching view this conversation as interesting, because I actually enjoy having this conversation, which might be somewhat pathetic. But it brought me great joy to be able to talk about it last year, even though I knew Iowa was not one of the top 4 teams in the country. But it was legitimate.
Sure, it was. It was. What would have been interesting was the playoff committee wrestling with the perception, both the public's and theirs, that there would be teams on this, like they would have brought Ohio State back into the conversation at 10-2 versus Iowa's 11-2, even though Iowa was the Big Ten champion.
How could you do that, though? How could you possibly do that?
Because they're selecting the best teams.
Well, that's why we had, as you've argued so many times in the past, the whole premise of the college football playoff is flawed because it's an invitational. I'm not saying we're going back to the old BCS system. No, but the premise of it is flawed.
You forget about Pitt. Pitt was 11-2.
Yeah, but I mean, 11-2 ACC champion is not getting in over to 11-2 Big Ten champion.
Well, I understand that, but they started the week. So going into the last week, Iowa was number 15 at 10-2. They were the 15th rated team in the college football playoff. Michigan State was 11. Ohio State was 7. Michigan, of course, would have lost the head-to-head, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we're going to bring Ohio State back in the mix at that point, let's bring back Ole Miss.
Sure.
Let's bring back Oregon. Oregon beat Ohio State.
Yeah, but they were ranked lower. That's why I'm telling you we're having 2 separate conversations in a sense. What is justified versus what they could do based on just believing certain teams are better than other teams. Ohio State's 10-2, Oregon's 10-2 in this scenario, but Ohio State's 3 spots ahead of them in the college football playoff rankings because the playoff committee just believes Ohio State's better.
Yeah, well, and I think the Notre Dame conversation. The reason I view that conversation as somewhat interesting is I don't think Notre Dame should. I don't think in that situation, my opinion is Notre Dame should not be a lock. In that scenario, Notre Dame should not be a lock. Okay, you're now a lot of people may disagree with this, but they're 11-1 without having to play a conference championship. So
I agree.
They're in the same situation as Alabama. And if you're not doing it, but if we're going to at all dismiss Alabama for being an 11-2 non-champion in the SEC, then we're most definitely going to dismiss over a Big Ten champion at 11-2, and we're most definitely going to dismiss an 11-2 non-champion in Notre Dame. The fact that they have refused to join the conference and so avoid having to play that game And so somehow that gives them an advantage. I think, the way you put pressure on Notre Dame to join a conference is you say, well, you don't want to play a conference championship game, then we're automatically going to give you a 13th game in the record, in your final record, and it's going to be a loss. That's how this works, because you're choosing to stay independent.
Corey, I apologize if you've ever heard me set this scenario up, but in 2018, 3 of the college football playoff spots were basically locked up if those teams went out and won their championship games as heavy favorites, and they did. Ohio State and Oklahoma were playing in their respective conferences, conference championship games, both with 1 loss. And I was sitting there in 2018 thinking, why are one of these teams going to get knocked out of the playoffs when they're most likely both going to win, which they did comfortably in Ohio State's case. And the committee is going to have to decide between a 12-1 Oklahoma Big 12 champion and a 12-1 Ohio State Big 10 champion, while Notre Dame is sitting on the sideline
right
at 12-0 and does not have to play a conference championship game.
Yeah.
And then what made it even more ridiculous was, and so they chose Oklahoma over Ohio State, which I didn't necessarily think that was a bad decision, but neither decision set right with me because we left out a 12-1 conference champion either way. And what was ironic about that was the first game of the playoff was a Clemson Notre Dame game in which Notre Dame participates in the ACC and every other sport and has a 5-game contract in football to play ACC teams. And they're playing an ACC champion in the playoff. And I'm sitting there thinking, this should have been the ACC championship game. And then you would have had both Oklahoma and Ohio State in the playoff, justifiably. And then what made it even more ironic was 2 years later, Clemson Notre Dame was the ACC championship game because Notre Dame got a pass to go and join a conference for one lousy year and participate in a conference they don't belong in.
Exactly. And they did it. They did it because it was convenient. That's the problem. There needs to be more pressure. And, we're talking conference alignment. What you just said is the exact scenario that just occurred last year. I mean, it's the exact scenario. Notre Dame plays in a conference championship game in 2018. They're 12-1 as a non-champion. They're out. They're out. They're not getting in over a 12-1 Big 10 champion, 12-1 Big 12 champion because they don't play the game. We give them credit for not playing the game. If we're other conferences and there's not a conference in America, unless you're just that bitter as the Big 12 and as the Pac-12 because the Big 10 and the SEC is picking off all your teams, there's not a conference in the country that are actually competing for playoff spots that should be against punishing Notre Dame for staying independent. Because all those conferences lose representation because we continue to give Notre Dame these free passes. And, that's a simple situation where you have athletic directors from around the country, from various conferences. Gary Barta was chair of the CFP recently. It's very simple. This is an invitational. So there is no real criteria, right? These guys decide how they're going to perceive teams. All you simply say is we're going to put more criteria on competing in a conference championship game or being part of a conference that has a championship game. How would we just say that? Because at least Ohio State plays in a conference that has a championship game. Same with Ole Miss and Oregon last year. So to me, if I'm any of the this is one thing that should, I think the CFP board should be able to, or committee should be able to unite around. And that is, we start laying the hammer down on Notre Dame. You want to play against the rules, then fine. We're going to give you an extra loss at the end of every single season. It may not show up on your board. It may not show up on your wall or in the record books, but in our minds, you've got an extra loss. You can be undefeated, but you're 12-1.
Yes, you decided not to participate.
Correct.
Therefore, that's
a forfeit.
That's a forfeit.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
So time to get on you need to get a video on this, Mark. You need to lay the hammer down.
Well, Corey, what's funny is that prior to sitting there on Championship Saturday in 2018, I always gave Notre Dame the pass. I didn't like that they didn't belong to a conference, but they always scheduled so difficult that I thought, you know what? They do go out there and schedule. They build a difficult schedule and they challenge themselves with a difficult schedule. But two things have happened since then. Number one, we've gone to a playoff system. And number two, in which the conference championship game is extremely vitally important. And number two, Notre Dame has given up its Big Ten ties to series with Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, and given those up for the likes of Georgia Tech and Syracuse and Duke and all these other crappy teams that they play every year. And their schedules have gone from being top 5 to 10 in the nation to top 40 or 50 in the nation.
And Mark, they also played in 18 Syracuse, Vanderbilt, Ball State, and Navy. So, yeah, they go out and schedule. Okay, great. So does Oklahoma, and so does, I guarantee you, Oklahoma and Ohio State played just as tough of a schedule in 2018.
Oh, sure.
So I don't care if you scheduled well, because if you're in a conference, you don't have a choice. Mark, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything to bring you. They're not doing any favors to you as an Ohio State fan by going out and scheduling tough. They're doing what Ohio State's forced to do every year because they play in a good conference. They actually play in a conference. So I just think
you're right. This is not 1990 when we could list off like 15 or 20 major football schools that were independents. They're the last one. So
yes.
Get with the program.
Get in or get out.
But it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's everybody else's fault for not forcing them to do the right thing.
Correct. And now you have all these conferences. They can see once again. Here we go. We're talking realignment, and the same program that we're attacking here is sitting king of the castle and basically controls the future of in a sense they control the future of college football, Mark, right? I mean, they swing the pendulum whichever way they want to swing. Well, how about this? How about instead of waiting to see what Notre Dame decides to do, if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, why don't the Big Ten SEC say, hey, let's throw a curveball at the Flailing Irish, and let's just leave them out of the party. You ain't gonna make a conference. You're not joining either one of these conferences. You're welcome to join the Big 12 and the Pac-12.
You're getting vindictive.
Well, I'm just saying that the conversation we've just had here has brought out vitriol, and I think it's ridiculous that Notre Dame control. I'm tired of hearing about them.
You also understand that the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to work together on this.
Well, I'm just saying,
whomever gets Notre Dame is going to say, we want Notre Dame and
that's the problem. Value. That's the problem. And they can take, and so they can, I just don't like the elite, the elitist mindset that university has. And as you said, it's everyone else's fault for allowing it. And I think we've talked about this. Notre Dame really hasn't been competitive in marquee games for quite some time, right? Can we agree on that? They've been competitive with the schedule they have, but once they play in a marquee bowl game, they really haven't been all that competitive.
No.
Especially under Brian Kelly.
They've gotten blown out most of the time in 30 years. They haven't won a major bowl game in 30 years, 1994 to be exact, so 28 years.
So in other words, not in my lifetime.
Yes, they have not. They are 0 and whatever the number is. It's like 9, 0 and 9 in New Year's 6 / BCS bowl games.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I took up so much time on this call, Mark. I hope you don't have other people waiting, but I will say that we came full circle here. But I guess my whole point in striking up this conversation about last year and the playoff last year is. For Iowa fans, if Iowa fans want to hold out hope for a legitimate playoff chance, you have a better chance this year, given the schedule, to go 10-2 and get in because of the schedule, because the schedule is more difficult. It's more. I wouldn't say it's not going to be a shoe-in, and certainly what these other conferences and top dogs in these other conferences do, it's going to play a major factor. But I'm just saying, at 10-2, playing Michigan, Ohio State in the regular season, Wisconsin, at Minnesota, Purdue, which they play every year. But I think the schedule lends itself. If Iowa's offense can improve, you've got a better chance with this schedule than maybe you did last year at 10-2.
Corey, for as long as this conversation's gone, I'm going to carry it 30 more seconds, if I may, because I'm going to make 2 points.
Sure.
One, just because I enjoy making this point, because I make it a number of times. But the first point would be, I must admit that the Iowa scenario going into championship weekend in 2021, as you just presented it, and we worked through it, was not nearly as difficult as what I remembered it being.
Yes. Thank you. I'm glad, because it wasn't. I had people laughing at me and telling me I was a fool. They're not one of the 4 best teams. That's not the point. Why can't we have a conversation about reality? We're not the CF. We're not the college football playoff committee, Mark. This isn't an invitational about who we think is the best. We're talking about scenarios.
Who earned it? Yes.
Yeah.
Point number 2 is, I make this statement every so often when it comes up, and we dragged Notre Dame and the ACC through this situation. How pathetic is it of the ACC? Can you imagine the Big Ten or the SEC, those 2 conferences in particular? There's just too much pride. There's too much self-worth there to say we're going to allow a school to participate in 14 or 15 other sports, but not football. Number 1. Then number 2, we have a worldwide pandemic, and at a point in which the conferences all consolidated, went into silos, and only played each other, except for some games against some group of 5 teams out there, but generally just played in silos for that particular season, that we're going to throw them a lifeboat and allow them and save their season and allow them to abuse our conference, to just use us for 1 year so that they can play football, play in our conference. And actually, I was rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC that year. I was hoping that they would win the ACC and make them look like complete fools for allowing them to play in their conference for 1 year, going in, winning the championship, and then leaving and saying, we don't need you next year. Bye. We're back to doing our own thing. But they abused you and won your conference. It's
Mark,
just
what the ACC did in 2020 is like bailing out some hot chick that you can't ever get, hoping that, hey, if I post her bail, maybe she'll find me attractive down the road. Like
Yes.
you what a ridiculous move. No, I don't think the ACC. I think you and I both know that the ACC. I mean, I don't even understand why the Big Ten allows the Notre Dame to play hockey. Like, people forget, the Big Ten, the Notre Dame is a Big Ten member in hockey.
Yeah.
They're an ACC member in basketball. Do they have their toes in other conferences that I'm not aware of?
Well, no, they're committed to the ACC and all the sports that the ACC participates in. You know, women's basketball, baseball, softball.
And yet they're committed, so that the ACC doesn't play hockey, I guess. I guess that's the case.
So.
Okay, well, I mean, what a ridiculous set of circumstances.
It is beyond. I had another analogy in me, but I forgot it now. But you hit on it.
Can you do me a favor? And I want you to cut this part and add this into the segment. I want you to cut this, and if you want me to do it for you, I certainly can. I want you to cut this segment out of this live stream. I want you to post it to your Notre Dame channel. Can you do that for me?
Oh, I'm way ahead of you. I was thinking of that minutes ago.
Okay.
But the last point I'll make is that I was ranting and raving. I don't think at that point we knew each other, but I was ranting and raving during that whole working through the pandemic and who's playing and who's not. Once the ACC extended that lifeboat to Notre Dame, I was pounding the desk, going crazy, saying, if I'm the ACC, I am telling them, you are playing football this year and signing a 20-year contract to play in our conference. That's the only way you're playing football this year. You have to sign a contract to play in our conference.
And you wonder, did the ACC do that because it feared that another conference would do what you just described? Were they willing to bail the pretty girl out of jail because they were afraid that somebody else is going to come along and win that pretty girl over? I mean, were they afraid the Big Ten was going to actually? Well, the Big Ten showed the Big Ten didn't show much of a backbone during 2020. No. We know that, but no. I guess what I'm saying is, what reason would you have not to do that? What you just described. Like, what a disadvantage would it be to the ACC to say it's all or nothing? Other than we fear that Notre Dame's going to latch onto another conference, and that other conference is going to win them over long term. What benefit did it do for the ACC to add them 1 year? What benefit did it give the ACC?
Notre Dame would have probably latched on to some other weak conference, probably the Big 12, and said, we want to play football this year. Can we join your conference for a year? And the Big 12 said yes.
So what advantage did it bring to the ACC at all, 2020 or long term, to have Notre Dame in the conference 1 year? What did it give the ACC? Because if I was members of the ACC, I'd be ticked. It brought nothing.
Yeah.
All it brought was another loss for a bunch of teams.
Yep. And the embarrassment of watching Notre Dame play in the ACC championship game.
It's embarrassing.
It is.
It's extremely embarrassing.
The lack of self-respect that the ACC has to allow themselves to be abused like that. It's pathetic.
So let's just recap, Mark. We've ripped into Notre Dame. We've ripped into the ACC. We've ripped into the playoff committee. We've ripped into let's see. You were kind of ripping into your caller Michael earlier. So we've done our fair share of ripping.
Wait a minute, I think he wants to jump back on here with me.
Okay.
I didn't rip him. I just said he was only off by 5 wins.
And I'll just say this, Mark, because I'll let you get to Michael. I see Neil Campbell's super chat, which I know you're thankful for. But as you know, Nevada got a little Nevada helmet back there, Mark. There you go. Bring the Wolfpack out. How about that? Put them on top. As you know, Mark, there's a pretty big night game during week 3 in Iowa City featuring the Nevada Wolfpack. So
let's rephrase that. I don't know if it's a big game.
it's a sold out game in Kinnick, Mark. And
if it was the only game, if it was a week 0, I would be watching that game. But I guarantee week 3, I will find 5 other games to be watching at that time.
Mark, it's a night game.
Yeah. And if I look at week 3 right now, you don't think I'm going to be able to find.
Well, maybe yeah. Oh, you're right.
That's your job, to watch Iowa and Nevada.
It is sold out. So
if I had an Iowa helmet, I would feature that matchup tonight and pin those 2 helmets against each other.
I guarantee. I haven't looked at the Nevada schedule, but I'm guessing that's their biggest matchup on the schedule. Going on the road, playing at night at Iowa.
I have 31 helmets back here. No Iowa helmet. Can you believe that?
Yeah, somebody said they sent you an Iowa helmet. I think it was our friend, the real Hayden, but I presume that you never got it.
I told people to stop down quite a long time ago because I need to establish a new iPostal address.
Well, I'll just say this: you need to get an Iowa helmet, and it needs to be one of the old Niall Kinnick leather helmets. I think that would be incredible.
Yes,
put that right in the middle.
Paying homage to Kirk Ferentz's or Brian Ferentz's offense.
I won't say anything else because I'll get in trouble, Mark. I appreciate you taking my call this evening. This was enjoyable. Hope I didn't drive away fans.
You did not, Corey. I appreciate it.
Talk to you Tuesday.
Sounds good. All right, we better rip through these calls. Let's take them in order. We got the real MVP up here at the Voice of College Football. And before I hear from the real MVP, yes, as Corey stated, thank you so much, Neil. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. It is much appreciated. Nevada is the dark horse of the Mountain West. Glad I caught this stream tonight. I'm glad you did as well.
Hello,
the
Mark.
real MVP. How are you?
I'm doing good. The first thing I'll say is I would make a recommendation is if you can have your media guests like Corey do a live call-in show with you, that would be fantastic because that was a great conversation.
Okay.
Second, for dark horse teams, I know
you don't like me taking these calls solo.
Well, I mean, having a partner it's kind of fed that energy into a great conversation.
Yeah, I just need somebody to push back on me. I got too many people agreeing with me, I guess.
Yeah, well, That's a good thing because you make a lot of sense, Mark. So,
All right. Thank you.
the topic was dark horse teams, and I'll give you a dark horse nobody's brought up that
Okay.
I'll say they could even win the national championship as a dark
Wow.
horse. Florida.
Wow.
They've got enough talent to do it. If you look at their blue chip rating, now,
agree, but
I understand.
I don't think you're a ton off there when I say I disagree, but I just disagreed that they're a national championship roster.
Well, if Oregon State you have making the playoffs as a dark horse.
Well, you understand they play in a completely different conference, though.
I understand that, but if they
the SEC schedule,
if they have one loss, maybe they could do an Alabama 2018-17 when they didn't win their division but still made the college football playoff.
Yeah, they could.
Maybe they don't play Alabama in the SEC title game. Maybe it's a Texas A&M instead, and they beat them. Maybe they don't beat Georgia, but Georgia loses 2 games. So,
Okay.
Now, is any of those things likely? No. But there is a very, very, very small chance of.
I'll buy that. Within the realm, they are okay. Florida is a better football team than the 4 teams that I put out there as dark horses. They have a more talented roster. There's no question. It's not even close. Minnesota would be second, but they're not as good as Florida in terms of talent. I don't know if they're as good. They might be.
Well, if you were going, once I saw Oregon State, Minnesota, I thought, I'm going to have to kind of go off the board a bit, Mark.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. I did a little work on Florida today because I'm going to be producing week 1 previews, and I looked at Utah and Florida.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game. That might be the best game of week 1 to be.
It might be.
In terms of
Ohio State's offense is as good as some people think it is, and they blow Notre Dame out. Yeah, that Utah-Florida game may be the game of the week because I don't have a whole lot of confidence. Sorry, Eric and other Oregon fans. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Oregon against Georgia.
I don't blame you. I don't think I've seen outside of Oregon fans a single person pick Oregon to win that game.
Yeah, I've seen Bo Nix against Georgia enough.
Another dark horse team to make the playoffs. I've thrown them out before, but I'll say BYU.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
I think their schedule's difficult enough for them to make the playoffs, and they've got a good head coach, and they've had the same group of players they had last year when they won 10 games.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And it's not too difficult.
Right.
So, yeah, they're going to get respect beating Baylor in week 2 at Oregon, Notre Dame, Arkansas. Yeah. And then Boise State on the road to finish the season and wouldn't have to play in a conference championship game. Yeah, those are 5 respectable games.
Right. That's
really respectable.
I mean, that's better than anything Cincinnati did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah, that's a much tougher schedule than Cincinnati beating up on East Carolina and Navy and Tulsa every week. Yes.
I'm trying to. If they do go undefeated, do you think they would? What seed do you think they would be?
Well, I always need to know what else is going on. They're not going to get seeded above an undefeated conference champion.
Okay, I was kind of asking what the ceiling was. I'm just curious.
Get seeded above Ohio State.
And I'm going to take it you and Corey don't like Notre Dame based on the conversation.
You know me. I like everyone equally. Wink, wink. I like everyone equally.
Well, I will give you some good news. Week 1, this debate will all be settled out. And what will most likely happen is Notre Dame loses 14-21 points, and boom, their playoff hopes are over with. 1 week into the season. Do you agree with that analysis?
If they play Ohio State close, then they're still in the playoff contention. But yeah, if they get drubbed, then that's going to be next to impossible for them to play back from. So it's possible because that's a week one. Not all games are created equal in the eyes of the playoff committee. If Notre Dame gets it pulled together after, let's say they do lose by 3 touchdowns to Ohio State, but Ohio State's the number 1 or 2 team in the country the whole season, and that's on the road. And then Notre Dame goes and they beat Clemson and North Carolina and USC 11-1. And they beat Clemson, North Carolina, USC, and that Ohio State loss is way off into the distance.
Yeah, but see, the problem for Notre Dame is that Ohio State loss is going to probably be treated like their conference title game. Be like, well, you didn't play a conference title game, and you lost to Ohio State. Because the SEC will probably get 2 teams in there with Alabama and Georgia. The Big 12 could get 1.
Let's remember that Notre Dame lost the ACC championship game in 2020 by 24 points and got selected for the playoffs.
Yeah, but the team they were going against was the team in Texas A&M that lost by 28 points to Alabama. So
yeah, and these scenarios could be part of the equation this year too.
I guess it bothers me that you can have a team that don't play as many games on the schedule. They're not playing as many good teams. They're just playing mediocrity for the most part. Outside of this year. This year's the anomaly.
Let's not be unfair here. If we're going to bash Notre Dame for all the things you just cited, then why don't we bash BYU for the same thing?
Oh, I'll give that to you. They lost to a terrible UAB team last year. They had no excuse losing to.
Well, I'm not talking about what happened last year. I'm talking about if BYU is in playoff contention this year for beating Baylor and Oregon and Notre Dame and winning these games, but they don't have to play a conference championship game, then
I give it credit. The only real difference is Cincinnati had a much easier schedule. Whereas you look at Notre Dame's schedule, I mean, it's a little bit tougher, but
Cincinnati played really one difficult team, and then Houston lost to Texas Tech. They weren't that good.
No, they weren't good. They were a top 30 team?
Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm being generous. They did beat Auburn.
Yeah, without half their defense, and that was way after Bo Nix got hurt and never played again. Yeah.
So, but you did say you wrote down some other dark horse picks outside of the 4.
Yeah, that I didn't get to, that I really didn't look at. And I didn't look at the schedule of these teams that I offered up. So as soon as I ran into Oregon State and they're playing Boise State and Fresno State the first 2 weeks, I thought, ew, that's not good. North Carolina came to mind. North Carolina. When I was looking at the SEC, I was looking more Arkansas, Kentucky than Florida, especially Kentucky.
I'm not going to say we're going to make the playoffs. I'm not even going to say we're a dark horse. I think Tennessee is more likely because I think Tennessee is one of the few teams that can afford a loss and has enough of a good offense to have a chance in every game they play, basically.
What do you mean they can afford a loss?
If they lose to Alabama by 3 points.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
But what if Kentucky does exactly what you just said Florida does, and Kentucky, from a non-conference standpoint, is more likely to do it because they play 3 cream puffs and they play Louisville?
Well, I think because of how weak our schedule is, I think it's harder for us to get into the playoffs with a loss than Florida.
You're in the SEC.
I know. Well, if you outside of Georgia, we don't play any top 10, 15 teams really. We play a lot of 25 to 20 teams.
Has there been an SEC team in a full season, so I'm excluding Texas A&M in 2020, that's only lost one game that hasn't made the playoff? I don't believe so. No.
No, I don't think so. But I would say Kentucky would probably have the weakest schedule so far.
So you lose to Georgia, you win the rest of your games, you get left out of the SEC championship game, you're 11-1.
Yeah, it also would depend if Georgia wins the conference. Because if they lose to Alabama, that's 2 SEC teams already in.
Yeah.
I don't think they're getting 3 in. As much as people like to say ESPN, SEC bias, and all that stuff, they're not doing that. And what is it? It's kind of with Notre Dame. We said if they would lose to Clemson and Ohio State, they had their opportunity, but they didn't prove it on the field. Well, in my mind, Kentucky had their opportunity to prove it on the field against Georgia, and if they lose to them, they lose to them. We shouldn't be in. Our out of conference games are against. Our out of division games are against Ole Miss and Mississippi State. 2 of the weaker SEC West teams projected this year. Our best win would probably be against Tennessee, something like that. I just don't see that working out to make the playoffs.
Yeah. It's still a better schedule than probably half the teams that ever made the playoff.
Well, I appreciate it, but if Notre Dame is 11-1, I think they get in over Kentucky.
At Florida, at Ole Miss, South Carolina, Mississippi State, at Tennessee, Georgia, Louisville. It's respectable.
Yeah, it's respectable, but I don't think it's an SEC schedule. When people think SEC schedule, they think of this destruction path that you go through. That's just a lot of meh. It's a lot of slightly above average.
Especially if you play in the East, sure. You've got an opportunity to not have a horrendously difficult schedule.
Right. There's 5 or 6 cream puff games. Easy games that's not even going to be top 50 or below. The 3 non-conference games, Vandy, Mizzou, Louisville. None of those wins are really going to stand out. And that's half the schedule.
All right, man. Anything else?
Yeah, that's all for it. I can't believe I was the one bashing Kentucky tonight.
Yes, I'm trying to stick up for the Wildcats for you.
I know. It's kind of crazy.
Trying to give you a path. I'm going to elevate Kentucky to the top shelf here. Let's get rid of USC. Get to the Wildcats up there.
Actually, could you put the USC helmet beside replace the Florida State helmet?
You got something against FSU?
No. I know Tim calls in a lot, and he claims I'm biased against the Pac-12 and against USC and stuff, so I thought I would throw them a bone.
Okay.
Hit the like and subscribe button to this video. Only, 3 weeks until the college football season?
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch a game in Dublin, Ireland.
See if Nebraska has figured out how to close out a game.
We'll find that out shortly. See you, Mark.
All right, man. Thanks. Okay, so we've got 3 calls left, and 2 of them have already called, but under certain circumstance here, because we've got a rule, 1 call per night, except I will allow these 2 because I'm just kind of curious on why one person called back and another person, I know why they called back, so we will allow them to have their take. But first, since this is the first call of the night for Porter, and before we do that, of course, Christopher Morgan, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. That's fine. Throw us a curveball when we win in the next 2 to 3 years when we average 11-1, 12-0 in non-conference. Huh? Do you think they will leave Notre Dame out of the playoff? Okay, first and foremost, we were not projecting or trying to predict how many times Notre Dame would or would not make the playoff. We were talking about the point that is pretty clear to most of College Football Nation is that if you have a reasonable structure to the sport, then everyone should be playing within that structure, including Notre Dame. That's not Notre Dame's fault. Let me be very clear. When my kids were of age 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, when they were under my supervision, and I allowed them to run wild and stay up all night or eat chocolate for dinner, that wouldn't have been their fault, and not do their homework. It's not their fault. It'd be my fault. So it's not Notre Dame's fault that they're allowed to do whatever they want. It's college football's issue. And because we don't have autonomy in the sport, or a commissioner, or an authoritative ruling committee to structure the sport, then they're allowed to do whatever they want. So I don't really understand your point here. I think I can speak for Corey here. Neither he or I were trying to project how much Notre Dame will be making the playoff. I will make a prediction right now. I guarantee that they will not be averaging 11-1 or 12-0 in the next 2 to 3 years. That's a half a loss a season. I'm going to guarantee that Notre Dame loses more than 2 games over the next 4 years. I'll predict that they're going to lose 1 game over the first 1 week of the season. All right. Porter's on the line. What's going on, Porter?
Hey, Mark. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the show as usual. All the kids and the wife are in bed, so I got to talk a little bit softly. But
okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I kind of when Southern Cal and UCLA left to go to the Big Ten, there's a lot going on in my life in terms of just trying to get kids to college and stuff, and put a deaf ear against to what was going on in the media. But you kind of acted like a giddy schoolgirl when that happened. So
did I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I mean, I was kind of surprised how positive you were about that move, but I will say that
I'll
rolling your eyes like
you have your say, Porter, and then I'll respond.
Well, I mean,
I didn't necessarily see it that way, but go ahead.
Well, it seemed like you were kind of excited about it, and I have no problem with that. I'm just, as a traditionalist, though, I was just surprised that you took that in such a positive way. In fact, I think I watched one or two of your shows when it happened, and you were like I said, a giddy schoolgirl when it happened, and it's almost like it's almost like after what happened last summer with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, it was almost like you kind of went, hey, the battle has been joined. We're glad to be the other conference to the SEC now.
Who's we? I don't have any affiliation with the Big Ten.
Well, but you're an Ohio State guy. Come on, I mean, you're Ohio through and through, and so you definitely have a bias, which I have no problem with that. I mean, we all grew up with our favorite teams. There's nothing wrong with that. But I will say this: I have enjoyed just in the past week or so watching your videos on, I guess, how the super conferences should go in terms of who they should go after, which I've kind of enjoyed watching. But I guess my thing is, probably part of this is why I put a kind of a deaf ear to a lot of what's going on is just I've just been disgusted with how our sport is becoming with NIL and the transfer portal, and now this with the conference realignments. I mean, you have, and my university is no different. I'm as you know, an alum of the University of Georgia. And, I mean, our coach is now going to start making $10 million. Yeah, you had the starting running back at the University of Texas driving a Lamborghini. I mean, where does this all go? I mean, I don't see how our sport can sustain what's coming down the pike right now.
So,
and I hate to be a downer because we're about to start the season, but I just want to throw that out at you.
The whole issue with NIL and with players being paid, whether that's from a collective, from being a brand, or whether that's someday being paid by the university for actual income for being a football player, I am torn in the middle, and I think this is justifiable because that is all within the rights of that individual as an American, versus, like you're speaking to, what's good for the sport. I don't believe this is good for the sport, but is it good for the individual? And even more poignant, is it under the rights and liberties of the individual? There are 15-year-olds that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars on TikTok. So we're talking about college football players that basically, here's the problem. College football and also men's basketball, but we're dealing with football, have become more and more popular with the advent of television in the 50s. And it's just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown to the point where millions and billions of dollars are made by a lot of people, but the actual athletes on the field do not earn money legally from, and now we basically ask them to work a job. It's a job. They don't, there's not football season. It's not like they're playing high school football. Well, shoot, high school football anymore. They're training year round. I don't even know. Like, you'd have to go down to Pee-wee football somewhere to actually call it an in-season sport, where the other 3 seasons of the year, you're a student. And then August 1st, come to camp, train for 3 or 4 weeks. We play our season, then you're done. See you. We hope you work out, stay in shape. We'll see you August 1st. That's the way it should be. That's actually the way it should be, but it's become a job. We have made it a job.
But I understand that, and I know it was a 9-0 court case that the Supreme Court ruled on. I understand that the genie's already out of the bottle. I'm not saying that we're going to put it back in the bottle.
I know,
but I just wonder 10 years from now, how do you sincerely see our sport 10 years from now? And again, it's kind of a wide open question. I don't want you to take too much time on this because I don't want to bore the people that are listening. But sincerely, how do you see our sport 10 years from now?
I think that there is going to be a percentage of people that are turned off by it, but not enough for it to greatly impact the popularity.
Really?
There are a ton of things that we could talk about concerning Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, that people don't like. And I know, because I see the comments all the time of people say, I loved the NFL 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but I don't watch it now. Is that hurting the NFL? Technically speaking, yes. The NFL might be making $13 billion instead of $12.5 billion. But is it hurting it to the point of it not being successful? Of course not. It's not even close. Shoot, Major League Baseball isn't even a nationally accepted successful sport, but guys are making ungodly amounts of money because it's supported by enough people for it to continue to be successful. Think about what an athlete makes. So Tony Gerdeman, who comes on here to talk Ohio State with us, he sent out a tweet the other day talking about Greg Maddux. I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but Greg Maddux made $82,000 in 1988. Now, this is a bit of a skewed statement because there were guys making $2 and $3 million back then. But I immediately went to my inflation calculator to determine $82,000 in 1988 was $205,000 today. So you're talking about a Major League Baseball pitcher making $205,000 right now. A good Major League Baseball pitcher. This is before he got extremely good. But there were guys, the top player in Major League Baseball at the end of the 1980s made like $3 million a year. Well, that conversion rate's like $7 million a year. So I don't think many of us would have that much problem if the best baseball player in the big leagues made $7 million a year. We'd be like, okay, there are guys making $3-4 million a year, and the very best make $7 million, but these guys are making like $40 million. Same thing in the NFL. But it still hasn't hurt the sport to the degree that it's impacted. Turning people off has not impacted the sport because not enough people have been turned off. And I think college football is going to be similar. There are going to be people 10 years from now saying, I don't watch college football anymore. But I don't think it's going to be enough people because people like to watch really fast, big guys run into each other.
But Mark, the problem is, I grew up at a time where it was a coast to coast sport. And it's almost like our sport is going to become a very provincial sport. It's going to be a Southeast, Midwestern, maybe a few outposts in the West.
Some people would argue the exact opposite, that it was a regional sport and now it's a national sport.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're in, I remember a time when Syracuse was good. I remember when Syracuse tied Auburn in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, they used to pack, I don't know, 65,000 into the dome there in Syracuse. You think if Syracuse gets left out of whatever this crazy configuration of conferences is going to be, you think people in Syracuse are going to give a damn about college football? Do you think people in Rutgers is going to care? You think people in if Kansas gets left out, you think Kansas is going to care? Kansas went to the Orange Bowl, 12, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just, again, I'm someone whose team just won the national championship. I mean, I should be just not worried about this stuff, but I love our sport so much that I hate what it's becoming. And I mean, I know it's what you do for a living and all that, but and I don't want to, be a Debbie Downer because I know this isn't really we're about to start the season and everything like that. But I mean, for someone that loves this sport, that grew up watching, from the 1970s through the 80s and 90s and, up until now, I mean, I just don't like what it's becoming. And
I agree with you again, but I don't know how to change that because the changes most of the changes that have come to college football are just rights of American citizens. So the only way to fix that would be to make it a league. And then you can put a salary cap, you can impose a salary cap, you can do things like that. And then it becomes even more professional in a sense.
But how long is it going to take the female athletes, because of Title IX, to start suing universities that are paying the male athletes for these? I'm sorry, the universities aren't paying the athletes. The accountants and the car dealers and all these other people that are doing the NIL deals. But you cannot tell me that the basketball player at South Carolina that's a female is not going to start fishing around for a possible lawsuit because Spencer Rattler's running around in a F-150 truck.
I'm not debating that could happen, but we know why it's not justified.
Why? I mean the federal government has already said that we're going to treat female athletes the same way as male athletes, and it's going to reflect the gender distribution at the universities. They've already said that. So
yes, and you might be right. It might. I think this borders on the insane, but the argument that we being females would have just as much right to participate and be given the resources so we can play is a different argument to me than we should be reaping benefits that we didn't create. Nobody watches women. I hate to offend people out there, but obviously some people watch women's basketball, but basically nobody cares. Like, not enough people care for it to generate
Well,
the
especially
type
when
of money we're talking about. Nobody cares. So sorry.
yeah.
You know, and maybe some women would get offended, but they should support their own sports, I guess.
But
you understand my argument. I do understand your argument, and in this crazy world and in this crazy country, that might get passed because we've got judges that are fools, and so that might swing that way. You're right. It might.
Well, let me bring up at least one interesting topic that I won't get into the gloom and doom of the way our sport is headed. I think it's all negative myself. But all right, this is my prediction for Bama. I got to go 10-2, and the reason why are the trips. They have 5 trips. Let me ask you this. Way. I'm going to give you 5 trips that Bama's going to take. And I want you to tell me their record coming out of these road trips. They're going to go to Austin. They're going to go to Baton Rouge. They're going to go to Oxford. They're going to go to Fayetteville. And they're going to go to Knoxville. Those are 5 trips. What's their record coming out of those 5 trips?
Well, their record's going to most likely be 5-0. The most likely win, the most likely loss to me. I'd have to see what games are surrounding those games, but I think Arkansas is the best football team out of those 5. So I would say that that's the most likely loss would be Arkansas 1, Tennessee 2, and then I forgot the other ones. LSU 3. What would you have? Ole Miss and I forget
Ole
the
Miss
other one.
Austin.
Oh, they're not losing to Texas. So Texas would be last, Ole Miss would be next, and the other ones I ordered. But
that is a special kind of heat that you have in Austin in September. I don't know if you've been there in September, but I used to live there.
Yeah.
But
I didn't have to play football.
All right, man. I'll get off the call.
Sitting outside enjoying a beverage. Yes.
Well, I would not be surprised if Austin's one of those that gets them. So anyway, I'll let somebody else call, but enjoy the conversation.
Thanks for
sorry to take such a negative tone, but
no, I appreciate it. We need to hear that. Thank you for that.
See ya.
All right, we are going to take our final call of the night, and we're going to break a rule here because I'm curious to hear what our guy Michael has to say after we corrected the Purdue-Ohio State series record. This is tremendous. Looks like I got to block some moron in the not like a real moron, like a living, breathing moron, but some bot in the chat here. All right. Oh boy, we would really have a lively conversation if women's sports were brought up on a regular basis. All right, Michael, how's it going?
All right, Mark. First of all, I'm eating crow right now. I forgot about some games. I missed some games.
5.
Yeah, obviously I did. But anyway, I thought I would digress. I thought maybe a couple of them might have been some. But anyway, let me rephrase it. Is Purdue? Let me re-ask you. Since 2000, is Purdue the team that has the most wins against, as an Ohio State opponent, has the most wins against Ohio State since 2000?
That certainly sounds right. Because Ohio State's barely lost any games. I know they've lost 5 games in the Big Ten in the last 10 years, and I know that 7-1 is their worst record other than their interim coach year going back to 04. You're probably right. How many is Penn State? Penn State would be the closest one. Michigan's only beaten them
once since 2000. No, wait a minute. Did they beat them in 05?
no. 4 times. They beat them in 2000, 03, 11, and last year. 4 times for Michigan. Penn State, but obviously played them a lot less or a lot more. So it's whatever, 17-4. Penn State beat Ohio State in 01, 05, 08. They beat them in 2011. There's 4. They beat them in 16. So Penn State
5.
Penn State 5, but again, they've played them a lot more.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying and stuff like that. Another one last thing: when is the thing going to be organized? Because Purdue's coming out with a special helmet for the Penn State game this year. And I was wanting to send it to you, but not sure how much longer it's going to be before you accept new helmets and stuff.
Yes, I need to get everyone a new address.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue's playing who this year?
Penn State.
Penn
They got a special helmet they're using for the game this year. So, and it's the black.
Really, you would rather see me with a special edition Purdue helmet than just the standard large P?
Well, yeah, but I mean, how often do you see? Do you guys? Most of them I see is regular, but do you have any specialized helmets that you don't have?
I only have one. Somebody sent me a navy. Where is it? Right there. Special
I don't
edition
remember
Navy helmet. I don't remember them. I don't watch Navy football a whole lot, but I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's nice helmet stuff. I mean, I can send it, but I figure you would like maybe getting specialized helmets better and stuff. So, Mark, you there?
Go ahead, Michael.
I was wondering what happened.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
You got a Mac. All it takes is one little faulty swipe, and you're gone.
I forgot you're still on the dark side. I see. Everybody using MacBooks these days. I can never figure it out. But anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I mean, what makes Mac better than regular desktop like HP or Dell's?
Okay, before I comment on that, I do agree that, there have been things that I have heard about the actual company and the people involved that I would not want to support. So that aside, if we're just talking about what works best, even though it's expensive, MacBooks are expensive. I had all sorts of, I'm an old guy. I've been using laptops forever. And I never owned a Mac until about 2011 or 12. And HPs and
Dells and stuff like
whoever else. Yeah, I had all those. And they would all get viruses and they would all be sluggish and it'd have pop-ups everywhere and all that. MacBooks just, they're completely safeguarded against this. I was told that. I didn't believe it necessarily, or it had to be proven to me, and just nothing.
Yeah. The thing is, though, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting, because you can use, I don't know if you use Windows or do you use the OS X operating for your MacBook, or do you use Windows? Because I guess you can use Windows for your Mac now.
I don't know that. I use so anyway.
No, I was just wondering stuff like that.
Anything else, Michael?
Nope. You need to do that with Corey more often. That's fun. And I wanted to jump back in there, but I didn't want to rain on his parade.
Oh, that's cool.
All right, sir. Have a great rest of your weekend. Talk to you soon, man. See ya.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Once we started in on laptops, I didn't want to keep that conversation going. Exploring with Ben and Sam. Yes. Get there, everyone. We have a great time. These guys have a great time. These guys are insane because I got to tell you, like on a day like today, I've been up since about 7:30, and I had a lot of personal things to take care of concerning the family, but also been working here on some things, and you throw it all together, and man, I'm ready to veg out. It's what? It's got to be, yeah, it's 1:07 a.m. And these guys will jump on for an after show party, and it's like a good time. And between Exploring with Ben and Tim and Eric's here, appreciate Eric being here, and we do need to get together to make sure that that this is the best it can be on Discord. So we will do that at some point. But as Exploring with Ben and Sam says right here, join us on Discord. You go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV. Some people get somewhat confused with the whole MarkRogersTV voice of college football. That was the initial brand name, was MarkRogersTV. So that's all over the place still on everything. But we transitioned to the voice of college football. But so it still has that attachment. Some people know us as MarkRogersTV first and foremost. Anyway, $5 a month. Many of you contribute $5 here. And how do I explain this? You may want to consider contributing that $5 first and foremost, and you get the conversation 24/7, 365 in the chat, and all the after show parties and all the watch parties that are being planned for this upcoming season, my predictions and everything else that you get on Patreon. And then also consider that when you contribute here on the super chat, I appreciate that beyond anything that I can explain. I sincerely appreciate it because I know that you folks work hard and each dollar is precious, but also consider for various reasons that it would be more beneficial to you and to me by contributing at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just keep that in mind. But there you go. 24/7 conversation there. And we've got it divided into chat rooms for every conference. Then there's an overall national chat. And then there's also a chat room for who knows what these guys are talking about. One Scoop John wanted a non-football chat room. So who knows what's going on in there. Then in addition to that, I've let everyone know here on a regular basis that as this continues to expand, keep in mind that we can build all sorts. I don't think there's a limit to the number of chat rooms that we can build. They're actually called channels, but I'm not trying to confuse anyone. So, and I'll get to you, Shoelace. I'm sorry that I didn't answer your previous question, so I'll get to you right in just a second. Oh, he says later, Mark. So I will respond to your email. I thought I did. Did I not respond to your email? So they're basically chat rooms, but they're called channels that we can build. I think it's limitless practically. So if we get enough traffic for the Ohio State Notre Dame game, for example, we'll do a separate room for that. If there's enough USC fans that they just want to have a separate USC channel or a separate USC recruiting channel, or the Utah-Florida game gets a ton of traffic, so we just want to make a chat for Utah-Florida week 1. Those are all possible as we continue to build out and get more and more people in there. King Vegeta, thank you. UCLA will go 12-1, winning the Pac-12. Wouldn't that be something? I'm not necessarily, other than UCLA having one of the best-looking uniforms in college football, would I be rooting for UCLA? But it would be kind of cool to see UCLA in the playoff. I just want to see new teams in the playoff. All right, so get on over to Discord. Shoelace, I'm sorry that you keep throwing these super chats at me, but I appreciate it. So let me find that and get back to you on that. But I did see and read your email about the app. But what we need to do is we need to discuss it. But thank you so much for that. I appreciate everybody that's got tremendous recommendations and suggestions and ideas. So you can always hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail if you have a suggestion or idea. This week, Power 5 Conference Week, we're going to hit a different conference. Man, I almost regret that I've committed myself to this because I'm gonna have to be ready for all the comments and questions. But we're gonna hit a different conference live stream each day or night, hopefully at night. And my predictions are coming, of course, and week 1 previews. And then also keep in mind that we're looking for hosts for the various team channels for the post-game show. So if you're interested, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Yes, no regrets, Eric. Absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a great night, and we will see you sometime on Sunday. I believe we will do another live show to kick off our Power 5 Conference Week. See you then, and thank you so much for your support.